everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Cinematic Realms. Yeah, you can all tell I was rushing at the last minute because I was still getting adjusted in frame when I popped up. I didn't have my headphones. And I want to point out I'm committing a cardinal sin right now. I'm wearing both my Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy t-shirt, which is DC, and I am wearing my newish Spider-Gwen little jacket, which I'm going to debut at some point in the future at a get-together, but I don't quite have the physique to pull off the Spider-Gwen shirt yet, so I'm okay doing it here, but Spider-Gwen does not have a slightly rotund midsection, shall we say, that I currently have. So yeah, I'll be saving that for some point in the future. But but I did want to debut it somewhere because I really like it. But how are you doing, Jared? You just got back from a trip.
I did. The reason we were off these past 2 weeks was because I was on vacation, a much needed vacation, because I had not taken one since I started my new job. It had been, almost 10, 11 months. It wasn't just a little staycation. I actually went over to Europe, to Eastern Europe, with two of my very good friends, Brian and Robin, and their kids. And we went through 4 countries, spent five nights in Croatia, 3 nights in Slovenia, 1 night in Austria, and 3 nights in the Czech Republic. And I'd never been to any of those countries. They were all beautiful, and it was a great time with great friends, and I got to have some entirely new experiences, and also something that had been on my bucket list for a very long time, which was to go to a couple of the cities where they filmed the TV show Game of Thrones, including Dubrovnik. I have not, and Split as well. So I've not had a chance to post the pictures yet. I will, but I got to see some of the very famous filming locations all across the beautiful city of Dubrovnik. The famous walls of King's Landing, the piers, the palace gardens where Olenna would hold court. And also, when we went to Split, I got to see several places where they filmed the city of Marine, including, the famous place where Dany kept her dragons chained up, and several other locations besides. So it was wonderful. And Slovenia was also a beautiful country. A lot of natural beauty there. We went through the Skopje caves to Lake Bohinj. In Austria, we were in Salzburg, which is also a beautiful city where they filmed many wonderful things, including The Sound of Music and the birthplace of Mozart, famously. So I got to see his birthplace and a lot of other cool things besides. And then the Czech Republic, where I actually have a little bit of family history. We spent time in a little village called Český Krumlov, which had some very interesting history, and then 2 nights in Prague. And then I flew out of there on Friday. So I spent the weekend kind of recuperating. I go back to work on Monday, but it was an awesome trip, and I can't wait to show off the pictures. But for the most part, I'm just happy to have had that experience, and now I'm happy to be back.
Yeah, God, I need an extended vacation. I'm talking the 2 weeks like you had. It's. I haven't had one of those in a long time, and it's not just about getting away from work. It's honestly about just getting away from the familiar, and whisking yourself away for a while. So, I want to say a big welcome to somebody who apparently doesn't know what's going on. Hi, Stav. Great to have you. Apparently, the only thing we had to do to get you here was to actually talk about something that you've seen. So who knew? Of course, we are going to be talking about The Princess Bride today, which I had an absolute blast revisiting this morning. And we're talking about that this week because you just got back from a trip and we wanted something light and fun and easy to talk about. And what better than one of the all-time classic movies? So,
yes.
So yeah, we'll be talking about that. And yeah, so I'm trying to think of anything I have that I want to catch up on before we get to the mid-roll and just BS for a while because it's been a while. I've missed you, buddy, because I've missed having our chats the past 2 weeks because it revives me on Sunday heading into the new week.
Yeah, no, I've missed it too. Obviously, like I would have been even happy to try to continue to do it, but it, logistically with the time zone difference, it just wasn't going to be feasible. But I was looking, I definitely didn't want us to take 3 full weeks off, so I was happy to make sure that we had something to talk about once I came back, and we've got a lot of great stuff planned up for the coming weeks. But this is a movie that is just, it's timeless and infinitely quotable, and it felt like the perfect way to kind of just welcome us back into our rhythm.
Yeah, I actually was just talking about this with Here Be Dragons and a few of our friends on our last Sunday. Actually, they have a coffee club in the Slack every week, which I usually don't make it to because I end up sleeping in. but I did make it last week, and we talked about the timelessness of The Princess Bride and the fact that like it's unquestionably of the 80s. There's no way around that. But somehow it continues to be this timeless piece of, just, fantasy, filmmaking, storytelling that resonates with every new generation. I didn't even see it until I want to think about, I was probably about 19 or 20 years old when I finally saw it, well past the time when it originally came out. And it took about 2 or 3 minutes and I was completely under its spell. And I think that's going to continue to be true. I mean, we'll see how it is, because I remember vaguely the 80s. So I did have a point of reference, being a little kid, during that time. So we'll see about, I'd have to ask kids who didn't grow up, from that time period, if like the scenes with, Peter Falk and oh God, what's his name?
Fred Savage.
Fred Savage. If those scenes work for them, or if it's just a little too removed. But I think the heart of those scenes, whether you recognize, the bedroom or not, I think that the emotion, between that develops between those two, and that I think that resonates regardless. And then you've just got the whole fairy tale of the main story that's just, like I said, it definitely feels of the 80s, but somehow it's timeless and beautiful too. Even the score, which is so 80s, is somehow like just, it works. It works beautifully. So I'm interested. When did you see The Princess Bride for the first time?
It's one of those movies that's so timeless that I actually don't even necessarily remember exactly when the first time I saw it was. I think I was probably around 9 or 10. But I just remember loving it from the beginning. I think it, there are are so many reasons why even this movie that came out in 1987, 2 years before I was born in 89, it feels like every new generation who comes to it has the same experience with it. And part of that, I think, is because it's just an incredibly well made and well acted and beautifully written and composed movie. But also, I think it's because at its fundamental core, what it's about is it's about storytelling. It is a story about, the power of stories in many ways, and that's something that everybody can relate to. And that's one of the reasons why, even though it may be slightly dated in terms of, the video game and the Fred Savage's bedroom, it's one of the reasons why I think that the framing device is such a beautiful and essential part of the movie. Because this could have been a great movie on its own if it was just presented as a straight fantasy story where we start with Buttercup and Wesley and take off from there. But the framing device gives it an even extra added layer of charm from the opening moments all the way to the very final line. And that's a testament to the fact that the framing device is also used in the novel that this is based on, which this is an interesting development because both the book and this movie are adapted by William Goldman, one of the all-time great screenwriters, and he adapted his own work. And he just had a perfect understanding about how to take it from.
Wait, what are you talking about? He clearly adapted the book is clearly adapted from the original classic by S. Morgenstern. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, we all know S. Morgenstern, one of the all-time famous authors. So, yeah. But yeah,
I think that's, and I was also having this discussion about the sort of the book versus the movie, and I think that, and I've read the book and I've actually quite enjoyed it, but I think what makes the framing device is what I think takes it beyond the book itself, because while the book has a framing device, it's a different one. And I think this bond between a grandfather and his grandson is just so beautifully executed, and the emotion there and the way, the movie, ends up with, as you wish, it's such a, critical, part of the movie, because everything sort of clicks into place with that relationship, and so I do think that's a wonderful success. But it's, you can thank the author regardless, because as you said, both the book and this film were written by William Goldman, and it's just a testament that he knew exactly what he had to do for the film versus the book, and it's absolutely brilliant.
And William Goldman, people will know him as one of the all-time great Hollywood screenwriters who wrote such classics as Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, which is another one of my all-time favorite quotable movies. All the President's Men. But this is just kind of a special movie. It would be a special movie in anyone's filmography, but even in someone who's had a career as long and storied as William Goldman's, this movie is kind of a crown jewel, I feel, because there, for as much as as brilliant as Butch Cassidy and All the President's Men are, they are more like of their time in the way that the films are composed. But this movie, I feel you could show it to absolutely anybody at any age, and they would get the story, and they would love the story, and they would not care about the fact that maybe the visual effects aren't like modern quality or something, because it's.
But that's just like, and maybe this is part of sort of being around at that time. But for me, that just adds to the charm of the whole thing. The fact that I can see like all the sort of rear projection, the artwork used for the background, and it's just something that I noticed. Like I picked up on, I looked at that stuff when I first saw the movie, and I was like, I was really impressed by it because it's just like old classic film techniques. And I saw this movie at around the time when I was being wowed in present day by like the Lord of the Rings and all the advanced visual, but those films themselves actually used a variety of old school and new film techniques. So I think that may have also helped me appreciate all the stuff on display in this film. And it's just, oh my God, it's so good. Yeah. And AR says, I'm shocked that they actually didn't like it when they first saw it, but yeah, I feel like even if initially you don't warm to it, it's only a matter of time because it's such a beautiful film. Although I gather there are Pedard told me of an acquaintance of his who actually did not like the movie, and and rattled off all the reasons for that. So they do exist, but you can't please everyone.
Yeah, of course. And no hard feelings toward anyone, but I am glad to hear, AR, that you gave the movie another chance and that you found more to appreciate and love about it on subsequent viewings. Because I do also think that even though this movie is it's got a relatively simple and straightforward story and themes, it is a movie that absolutely rewards you on rewatches. Mostly so that you can ultimately come back and know every single line of dialogue when it's coming and all the witty banter, but also just little moments of performance and craftsmanship and the music. You had mentioned the music earlier, as you said, it has a very 80s score, and it does, and like for like the action scenes and stuff, but it also has what I think is, even though it's incredibly simple, just a few notes, it has one of the most beautiful love themes of any movie.
Yeah. Well, and when I say it's very 80s, just in terms of like the way it's performed, it uses like synthesizers and and all that. Like it's, in terms of its instrumentation, it's like it's very out of the 80s, but it's one of the most beautiful scores I've ever heard. And yeah, the love theme is beautiful. It has these moments I love where the score where it'll get very dramatic. And it'll take that up to a point, and then it'll kind of recede into like fun and whimsy. And so it's like, so it threatens to take itself, almost too seriously, but never sort of crosses that line and forgets what it is. And I just think that that's so wonderful and charming. But yeah, I was watching it today and I was like, I was anticipating every line of this thing as I was watching it. And I think that that's sort of, we're talking about, William Goldman's, script for the film. And I think that it's just like every beat of this thing is so memorable and quotable. And so I the danger is, of course, that we just go through and quote the entire movie, which we'll probably do that for large swaths of it, but we'll try to resist just a complete recap. But yeah, so I'm trying to even think where to start. We did talk about Fred Savage and Peter Falk. I just want to start off by saying that, like, it was so amazing when I first saw this movie to see Peter Falk, because I had grown up on seeing him periodically every so often in old reruns of Columbo. And so so it's so funny because I see him and he's like and he's not presenting himself as like Peter Falk the actor. He's Peter Falk under Peter Falk makeup, it's like it was like, and maybe that's what he did his entire career. I'd have to see more of his work outside of this and Columbo, but it did feel like he walked right out of an episode of Columbo into this movie. And I was so delighted. And I just love that this performance of his in particular is just ingrained in like stone for all time with this movie. And he's just such a warm, welcoming presence.
Yeah.
And then you've got little Fred Savage, who will always be this little kid in the 80s bedroom playing his video game. Which and like I love picking stuff out when I start watching this movie every single time. Just like I love seeing like the He-Man action figures in the background and the posters on the wall, and it's just so it's so wonderful. And I think this is a part of it where it's like it is valuable that I was born in the 80s, and I don't remember the 80s that clearly, but enough, late 80s, early 90s to where I can really appreciate this. And it's not quite a Nintendo system that he's playing. I think it's generation before that, but I really identified with that, and it's just so like every bit of this when he says does he have to, he'll pinch my cheek, I hate that.
Then he does.
And then
maybe he won't, and then he does.
Yeah. Yeah, so like just it's hard for me not to be just instantly won over just by the opening of the film alone before we even get into the sort of the main fairy tale story. And I'm wondering, was it kind of the same thing for you? You were born a couple of years later than I was, so you maybe don't have quite the same frame of reference, but we're not that far removed in age.
No, I mean we're only 5 years apart, so it's not like, I mean, like, again, I recognize that video game system. I recognize all the action figures. I did not grow up watching Columbo reruns, so this was my introduction to Peter Falk. So maybe that is a point of difference, but
which it's still to be clear, it's really weird that I grew up watching episodes of Columbo, because I feel like when I was doing that, I was probably not the target audience at the age that I was at when I saw that. But that's me. What do you expect? I was ahead of my time with, in terms of the sort of age level of stuff I was watching. So, but so that's not a normal thing, I think. So I can't blame you there.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was more of the time of Seinfeld and Friends and that kind of stuff. But
I was too. It's not like I was alive when I don't think I was alive when current episodes of Columbo were running.
Oh, no, I wasn't saying that, but I was saying, like, even then, those shows were everywhere. But all I mean by that is that, like, again, this was my introduction to Peter Falk, and so for me, he is always going to be the grandfather from The Princess Bride, even though he's had a long, storied career otherwise. And as Mother Roy points out, he worked a lot with John Cassavetes and did a lot of great films with him. And yes, Fred Savage, even though he is now, grown up to be a fully adult man and going on to have other careers, in some respects he is always going to be this little kid in the Chicago Bears jersey, and he's who is apprehensive about this classic tale that his grandfather wants to read him, mainly because it's this big question: is this a kissing book? Yes, it is. but fortunately, he gives it a chance, and watching him throughout the movie, like, just get slowly more invested, in the story, and almost too invested at points. I'm like, this is something I could relate to so deeply. Just the fact that it's like you start off reading a book, or your parent or your grandparent is reading a book to you, and you're not like that into it at the beginning, but then the power of the story draws you in, and you're like, what happens next? Or when something that you don't want to happen happens, you're like, no, that didn't happen, you got that wrong.
I just want to update here. Apparently, like, maybe it wasn't that weird that I had seen episodes of Columbo, because apparently the first pilot was in 1968. But then apparently and then it went up initially to, it looks like, season 9 or 10, where it was in 1990. And then there were specials that continued through 2003. So that's a much longer run than I thought the show had. That's pretty damn impressive, and explains why I was aware of it. So, yeah.
I'm not saying, like, obviously it's a very famous show. I just hadn't seen the reruns as much. I was not expecting us to talk this much about Columbo, but again, when you're bringing Peter Falk into the conversation,
sorry.
Yeah. But yeah, the framing device, as we said, it's a beautiful part of the movie, and like at seeing, it's notable. We're calling them Peter Falk and Fred Savage because the characters don't actually have names; they're just the grandfather and the grandson. But they are just so beautifully drawn, and the dynamic and the interjections are wonderful, especially building to the end when the little boy who was so apprehensive about hearing the story from a kissing book, at the end he doesn't mind so much after. And we can definitely relate to that.
I think actually the most dated thing of all might be the kid who's playing a video game without that much prodding, agreeing to set down the video game and listen to his grandfather read him a book, because that does seem fairly outlandish from a modern perspective.
It does. To be fair, I don't think he was winning, so maybe that made it easier. But yes, if the grandfather came over to read to little Fred Savage today, and he was playing something like Call of Duty, he might have had to work a little bit harder. They might have had to turn the console off.
Oh, okay. Well, not to spend too much time here, because we'll check back in with the two of them as we sort of work our way through the story. But yeah, then he, although I can't help but quote, like, I love, and well, you can read if you want. I'll try to stay awake. Oh, thank you very much. Your vote of confidence is overwhelming. The Princess Bride by S. Morgenstern, Chapter 1. Buttercup lived on a small farm in the country of Florida. I could quote the entire movie, because it's just like the performances and the lines. It's just all so beautiful. But we enter into the main story just with that beautiful opening shots of the farm, and then we're introduced to possibly two of the most beautiful human beings ever created, Robin Wright and Cary Elwes, who, of course, I had always loved Cary Elwes from, I would say, a much more dated film, Robin Hood Men in Tights. Which I still love, regardless of certain eyebrow raising things about the movie. and so like this is a mode of Cary Elwes that I'm very familiar with, where he gets to play the swashbuckling hero. Yeah, and of course I knew at this point I knew Robin Wright mostly from Forrest Gump, as I think a lot of people did, and just, it's such a magical opening. Just even talk about painting a picture of two characters just head over heels in love. And of course, Buttercup doesn't even realize it initially until until Wesley really lays it on thick in his "As You Wish."
Yeah,
it's just such like, again, like every time I start watching this movie, you know what it is? It's this bit in the opening, once we really get into the story, and you've got Mark Knopfler's beautiful love theme, and you're watching these characters interact with Buttercup saying farm boy, fill up these pictures, it's the whole thing feels like a really warm blanket, and it's just, it works its magic over me like every single time I sit down to this movie.
No, I mean, Cary Elwes and Robin Wright are truly perfect casting, and it never fails to amaze me, in particular, that this was like Robin Wright's only like her second movie ever. Like whenever we get to the end credits and we see the line "and introducing Robin Wright," I'm just like, dear God, how did she just emerge into this world perfect? Like how did this? Like how are you this good when you were like I only a other like Hollywood Vice Squad was the only other movie she had ever done before this, which I had never heard of. But it's also just the chemistry that the two of them have. I saw this movie before Robin Hood Men in Tights, so this was also my introduction to Cary Elwes, and so he will always be Wesley. And Robin Wright has had a little bit more of a varied career, but to me, she will also always be Buttercup. And it's just, the dynamic is beautiful, because as like the grandfather interjects that line, that Buttercup grew up on the farm and her hobbies were writing and essentially kind of torturing the poor farm boy who lived there. His name was Wesley, but she never called him that. Isn't that a wonderful beginning? It is. But because
it's really good.
It's really good.
Which is so brilliant. It is so brilliant because, like, we're waxing poetic about it now, but especially as at the time, I'm coming to it as I was older than you watching it, but a young boy, saying like, watching a movie called The Princess Bride, and it's opening up with this sort of fairy tale romance. And this was before I had really let my guard down about actually what I loved about movies. And a lot of that is romance. But what all the Fred Savage, interjections really do is he's speaking for the audience. Yeah. And it's like, yes, we know this is really sugary and sweet. And so he's going to take the wind out of the sail every couple of minutes so that you don't have to worry about sort of chuckling along to some of this stuff. And it's just perfect, because as he's won over throughout the film, so too are you. Exactly. And it's just it's just so brilliant and perfect, and it just makes the whole thing work beautifully.
Yeah, and to be fair, he's hearing his grandfather's beautiful reading voice, but he's not getting to see Cary Elwes and Robin Wright fall in love. Maybe that would have grabbed his attention a little bit more. But as it is, their introduction is like, it follows the classic rule of three in many ways, where we see Wesley and Buttercup's first interaction, and she rides in, looking gorgeous, and then she just has the very kind of haughty and "Farm boy, holster my saddle. I want to see my face shine in it by morning." And Wesley responds for the first time, as you wish. And she kind of just flounces off, but then the second time he's chopping wood, she comes up to him and asks him to do another favor, and then she catches his eyes, under that lock of hair, the eyes like the sea after the storm, and she almost like gasps, but she still asks him to do it. But then she adds the please. He says, as you wish. That day, and then we get the absolutely great narration from Peter Falk. That day, she was stunned to discover that when he was saying I wish, what he meant was I love you. And even more amazing was the fact that the day she realized she truly loved him back. And then we get the beautiful moment where he brings in the wood, he's about to leave, and she says, farm boy. And he turns around, and then she's looking desperately for anything to do, and then he's like, fetch me that picture. And then he comes in so close to where the picture is right above her head, and that's kind of like smiles as he very gently brings it down, and then whispers to her, as you wish. And by then we're all besotted, as much as she is, and he was
and the lip bite, that just screams volumes. Oh God, it's so beautiful.
Yeah, and then it's paired with the absolutely beautiful shot against the setting sun of them having their kiss, and then we get the absolutely perfect interjection from Fred Savage. Is this
hold
a kissing?
Hold it. What is this? Are you trying to trick me? Is this a kissing?
Where are the sports? Where are the sports, Gwen? I was promised the sports. but yes, it like as you said, that is kind of, he's serving as the audience viewpoint, and very specifically the viewpoint of a young boy who is obviously at this age not going to be into the kissing parts, even though he will learn to love them by the end, because of the power of the story. But his subsequent interjections are actually, if anything, even funnier when, as the grandfather goes on about the beauty, he's like, I don't believe this. And then,
Hi, Laura.
Hey, Laura. And then perhaps my favorite, which is, again, from the little boy's perspective, when he's talking about Wesley going off and then he's like, he never reached his destination, was he was attacked by the Dread Pirate Robbers, and the boy chimed in, murdered by pirates is good. But obviously, Wesley's not dead. But it's just grounding it in the story itself, like their parting is so incredibly emotional, and specifically the line that, the idea of that, the fact that this is true love, and as Wesley says, this is true love, you think this happens every day. And you can see you could see a little bit of the charm that will become Wesley and his Dread Pirate Roberts guys, like right there. And it just reminds us that, yes, even though true love is a staple of fairy tales like this, it is actually something that can be rare and special.
I like to say that because he plays Wesley as the story starts off with a lot of like pure earnestness.
Yeah.
I feel like, and then when he comes back as the Dread Pirate Roberts, that's when I see a lot of Robin Hood from Men in Tights, and so like it's interesting the way he chooses to play Wesley's sort of evolution, throughout the story, and I think he's great. I also want to shout out something else I had seen him in when I was younger was Days of Thunder.
Mm-hmm.
Which, he plays a bit of an antagonist in that one. So, but no, he was like, and I was always surprised that Cary Elwes wasn't like more of a sort of big sort of leading actor success. But it's like he certainly secured his place in film history. So
yes.
But yeah, so yeah, the two of them separate. We get, of course, as you said, the great "Murdered by Pirates" is good. And this is when we're introduced to the concept of the Dread Pirate Roberts. Keep note of that, kids. That's gonna be important as in the future. So then we like cut forward to Buttercup is then after she's sworn she will never love again, we get introduced to her marrying Prince Humperdinck, which like there is no way to describe the complete sort of incredulous like joy and hilarity of seeing this film for the first time and listening to the names of these characters. A Princess Buttercup and Prince Humperdinck. It's so good.
I honestly think Humperdinck may be an all-time great movie character because there's no way to say it without it sounding absolutely ridiculous. And the character that Chris Sarandon is playing, he has his kind of buffoonish qualities to him, but he also is a ruthless villain in many ways. And I actually think this is one of the elements of the performance that I've appreciated more and more, just how great Chris Sarandon is in this role. Because again, it would be very easy to kind of not take him seriously, but some of the stuff he does, he actually proves to be a very capable antagonist, even though he is ultimately a coward, as Wesley and Buttercup rightly charge him. But he is. He's a great hunter. He is kind of politically Machiavellian, and he is cruel and rotten to the core. And all of it, kind of is hidden by when you hear the name Humperdinck, you're like, that guy can't be that evil. Oh yes, he can.
Yeah, I'm trying to to look at one quote of his in particular that I love, but I can't find it on this page. I can't believe they're really slacking on this quotation page for this movie. There should be a lot more. Hold on a sec. It's something to the effect of when he and Count Rugen are talking in the forest. And first of all, this is where we find out that Count Rugen's first name is Tyrone.
Yes.
It's ridiculous. He says, hey, I love watching you work, Tyrone, but I've got my wedding to plan, my country's 500th anniversary, and my wife to murder and Gilder to frame for it. I'm swamped. And Count Rugen, God, I forget exactly what it is. It says, but
he walks up to him and says very sincerely, "Get some rest. If you haven't got your health, you haven't got anything." It's actually, you get the sense that these two, sadistic sociopaths actually like each other. They have a good.
But then there's this wonderful warm smile on his face. It's just so hilarious and so ridiculous. I love it. So yeah, he's like both of those two are such amazing characters and very malevolent villains, but they're also ridiculous. as is much of this movie, and I say that in the best possible way. It's oh god, it's so good. but yeah, so and what's interesting is it really isn't until this point or that point in which we've kind of skipped ahead where you realize the extent of Humperdinck's villainy, that he's the one that hires Bassini to actually murder his fiance. But before that, he's just kind of a doofus who's very like, who's not going to let go of his betrothed, and so for that reason he's a villain, because he's keeping Wesley and Buttercup apart. But that's the extent of his villainy up until then. That's the point in the movie where it takes a turn when you realize, oh no, he's actually a real son of a bitch. But we can get to that. That's skipping ahead. I really want to talk about the introduction of the three characters who are just like so much of the joy, particularly two of them. This is where we meet the characters of Vizzini, Inigo, and Fezzik.
Yes.
And played by the great Wallace, Shawn,
Mandy Patinkin,
Mandy Patinkin, and André the Giant. You know, which, oh god, I you know, especially Inigo and Fezzik are just like these such endearing cinematic characters, and they are so much of the heart of this movie. Yeah, and what can you say about Wallace, Shawn? And you know,
you could
inconceivable.
I was going to say that if a picture could talk, you could absolutely hear that image right there, because there are you know, even though like Wesley and Buttercup are our main characters, if you ask people what are a few of the things that people will know most about The Princess Bride, they will be, hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. And inconceivable.
You keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means.
Which is so great. I definitely use that refrain in my life. The whole, you keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means.
And let's be honest, particularly on a first viewing, you don't catch about 60 to 70% of what André the Giant says, and that's what made, like, that's part of what made Fezzik so wonderful. But I'm happy to say that after many viewings of the movie, I have, you know, caught every little word he utters, and I adore him so much. I am not someone who was the audience for, you know, what WWE, you know, I was not a wrestling person, so my knowledge of André is this film, and I will forever adore him. I did actually watch the documentary on him from a number of years ago. I think it was an HBO documentary. You know, and a lot of his life was very, you know, there's a lot of sadness to his story, just the things that he dealt with. So it makes me overjoyed that, you know, that he's really immortalized in this film. And, you know, and there's so much of his joy that's present in this. And yeah, he's just such a wonderful human being, and for him to have brought that, you know, those parts of himself to the screen in this character, I always get a big stupid grin on my face, you know, whenever he pops up in the movie, and like everything he says, just like the interactions he has with everybody, just like the rhyming with Inigo, and then like even simple exchanges where like you know, they've agreed that Inigo is going to stay behind to fight the Man in Black, and Vizzini's, you know, like you know, come on, we're heading off, and Fezzik and Inigo just have this small little exchange where he goes, you be careful, people in masks cannot be trusted. And Inigo just goes, you know, just this hilarious little exchange. And then, you know, when Fezzik is facing off with Wesley, and he just throws that rock at him that smashes against the big boulder, and And then, yeah, he says, I did that on purpose. I didn't have to miss. I believe you.
Yeah, but because he's right. His way is not very sportsmanlike, but it's not actually his way. It's what Vicini suggested, which is another one, which leads into one of my other favorite lines from the movie, which is the like again classic deadpan humor from Cary Elwes, which is when Fezzik suggests that they have a contest of skill hand to hand, and Wesley or the Dread Pirate Roberts is like, so you'll put down your rock and I'll put down my sword and we'll try to kill each other like civilized people.
I could kill you now. To be honest, I think the odds are slightly in your favor when it comes to hand fighting. It's not my fault being the biggest and the strongest. I don't even exercise. See, we're doing it. We're quoting the whole movie.
It won't be the last time, and we can obviously go to a little bit, but yeah, it's just this whole conceit. Like, this is where the movie really starts to develop its charm, because again, the opening sequence is very sweet and earnest, and then we get the kind of the sadness of Wesley's presumed death and Buttercup being now essentially being forced to marry Humperdinck against her will, and then it's actually kind of malevolent, the introduction, when she's riding off into the woods and
I'm glad you've gone back to that, because I really do want to single out the wonderfulness and hilarity of the establishing shot of these three characters.
Yeah, they do not look like circle.
And then you just get this shot of the three of them standing there in order of height. Starting with Vicini, who's so small, and then you got Inigo, and then Fezzik just taking up the whole screen size. And then just the phrasing of oh God, again, what is his exact wording, where he says something like, "My lady, we are but poor lost circus performers." There is nothing nearby, not for miles. Then there will be no one to hear you scream, and and then it's so it's this cross between absurdity and like tension, and there's obviously some malevolence there, but it's just and then going into the wonderful conversation between those three characters, that includes Wallace Shawn going, am I going mad, or did the word think escape your lips? You are not hard for your brains, you hypnotic landmass. Yeah, I agree with this. Like, oh, the sod is spoken. I will kill her. And don't forget this. Never forget this. When I found you, you were so slobbering drunk you couldn't buy brandy. And you, brainless, hopeless, do you want me to send you back to where you were, unemployed in Greenland?
Oh man, yeah, it's like part of the comedy of this situation obviously comes from the fact that Wallace Shawn is he's a relatively small man, and he has a very distinct voice, and the fact that he's the one in charge and ordering these two much bigger and more capable individuals around is part of the charm of it. Also because one of the movies I had seen before Princess Bride was obviously Toy Story. And when I heard Wallace Shawn's voice, I was like, that sounds so familiar. Where have I? And it's like, oh, because he voiced Rex in Toy Story. And here he's playing a very different character, but obviously it's a very distinct, and just the dialogue that Vicini gets. Like, he may not be as smart as he thinks he is. I actually think he's a little bit of a fool, but he certainly does have a way with words.
Oh God. This is like, it's funny because I had this relationship with with my mom where we both really loved watching movies together. But every so often, I would have a love for a movie that would mystify my mom. And I don't think she quite got The Princess Bride. Like, but this was one of the scenes where where I think she got the absurdity. And so even though it wasn't quite her, thing, I think she could appreciate just the, absurdity and hilarity of having, Wallace Shawn just spouting off all these orders and, insults and stuff like that. I think sometimes when it came to movies, she wasn't quite sure, like when a movie veered into really absurd, I don't think she always was super in tune with how much of that absurdity was on purpose and how much of it wasn't. And I think this one was one of the movies where she wasn't quite clocking, that it was meant to be as ridiculous as it is, which, that's fine. But I was glad to see that certain moments of the movie she understood that that's what they were going for, and this was definitely one of them. But yeah, it's it's so wonderful, and this is really also where you start to see the close friendship between Inigo and Fezzik. Where he, Inigo goes over to kind of console Fezzik, and they start going into their rhyming. Yeah, Vizzini, he can fuss. He likes to scream at us. Probably he means no harm. He's very, very short on charm. And it's just so delightful, and like this is one of those cinematic friendships for the ages. Like if you compile a list of like great on-screen friends, the two of them have to be near the top of the list because they just have this wonderfully warm dynamic that's so beautiful. And it still cracks me. I will say, in terms of like seeing actors in other places, it cracks me up when I see Inigo in this Mandy Patinkin, and then I think about him in Homeland. It's just, he's so dramatic and serious, but also he has this warmness, to him in that, which is part of the reason why when I saw that show and I saw he was in it, I was like, it's Inigo, and so, oh god, it's again, it's just a testament to how wonderful the cast in this entire film is. Like all these characters are just, even the smaller roles are just almost instant classic characters who you never quite forget.
No, I mean, like we'll go get into some of those later. Even the like characters who have basically only like one scene, but that scene is just so iconic that you could quote any line from Enemy. You're like, yep, that character, that scene. But part of the reason Inigo and Fezzik are so indelible is that they just have so many of those great lines, and their dynamic is wonderful. The friendship, even though it seems like they hadn't known each other before because they came from very different backgrounds. They just, we believe the sincerity of their connection, and that they would, when they're reunited, it's one of like in a very dark point in the movie, you're just like, yes, they're back together. even that, and this is one of those, including one of those moments where there's absolutely brilliant deadpan narration from Peter Falk. Like the fact he's like, Fezzik took great care in nursing Inigo back to health as he's dunking him in the water. Or he's like, Inigo took the news very well, and as he like falls face first into his ball. So again, great physical comedy too, as well as writing.
Yeah. Which you kind of, that's when you really feel bad for Fred Savage. He's not seeing the movie version of this along with us. He's missing a lot of jokes. I do also want to say, because I just realized I made note of this during this scene, the three of those characters on the ship, is that this is such a beautiful film.
Yeah.
You know, I think we talked recently about the fact that we often forget to mention sort of sometimes we can forget to mention things like the cinematography, which is odd because that is like something that I very often, you know, talk about, you know, the beautiful visuals of a film. And yeah, to forget to mention that seems like a crime. And the cinematographer in this case, his name it was Adrian Biddle. Just this is such a colorful film. And the reason why I say that is because I feel like that's something that is so often undervalued, especially from a modern perspective, because I think a lot of filmmakers of today try and give their film a very distinct look. So there might be a push to have a certain sort of visual tone where you might strip a lot of color away, or you might go overboard on certain. This is a very beautiful, natural looking film. And I just think in a lot of ways that's kind of a lost art. And especially another reason why I want to make note of that is because the film did not always look like that on home video. Because I remember my very first DVD that I got of the film was very like the colors were a bit drained out of it because of probably the film print that they use. And plus, you know, DVD video masters were not necessarily known for, you know, adherence to the original production. And it was really when they did a remastering for a later DVD and then eventually the Blu-ray and now the 4K from the Criterion collection, which, yes, I do have that to show off right here with its wonderful book and everything. So this film has had a bit of a road in that regard on home video, and just the result today is that it looks, whether you're watching the film on 4K or you're watching the streaming version, it's a beautiful looking film. And yeah, I just want to make sure we made note of that, because like I said, you don't see films that look like this, you know, these days. It's very unheard of. And
yeah. No, I'm very glad you mentioned the cinematographer Adrian Biddle, because I agree. You know, even though this movie, you know, does not have like the highest budget in the world and doesn't use like fancy color gradings or stuff, it's just a beautiful movie to look at. And the way that, you know, he uses the camera not only in like the action sequences but also just in like the simple dialogue and scenes, like it's expert work. And Adrian Biddle was not a name that automatically popped for me as like a cinematographer I recognize, but then I go and look at his filmography and I realize, oh my God, before this, you know, he was the cinematographer on Aliens, and after this he was the cinematographer on Willow and Thelma and Louise and V for Vendetta. Like, this guy has, you know, been around, and obviously he's no longer with us, unfortunately, but that is an impressive resume. And as you said, like, the film, while, you know, in perhaps in earlier releases of home video, it didn't have the same, you know, quality. Now that it's been restored, it looks gorgeous. Yeah, this shot is one of my favorites.
I just looked at that, God. Yeah, it's. Yeah, I'll run through some of the images I already used, just like the natural look of the film. You know, you don't get, you know, films that have an appearance like this, and it's just. And again, I want to talk about, you know, like what I said before, where you've got like matte paintings and stuff in the backgrounds of shots. Like, it just adds a very classic look to the film. It's just, yeah, it's they did such a wonderful job with this. And I think it is one of the most beautiful fantasy films ever made. And you know, on a relatively fairly small budget, as you say.
Yeah.
You know, it's sometimes you do more with less.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, like, I won't deny that. Like, there are moments where you can see that this movie did not have the highest budget in the world. Like, for instance, on the dual place where Inigo and the Dread Pirate Roberts have their duel. Like, you can tell that like some of the rocks are made out of foam and they're not real
But
rocks.
see, this is like one of my. Yeah, it's actually one of my favorite sequences, just because it does look like something that's out of an old movie. You know, it's the way that the fight is shot and composed, and the way that it's obviously a set with matte paintings in the background, and but the choreography of the sword fight is very classic. It's like it's been pulled. Speaking of Robin Hood, it's like this was pulled out of an Errol Flynn, you know, movie.
Absolutely.
You know, and that's again something that you don't see. You know, I was talking about the fact that I was enjoying the Lord of the Rings at the same time, and don't, this is not me talking shade about Lord of the Rings at all. I think you all know that the regard in which I hold that, but that's a very modern film with sort of modern sensibilities of how things are shot, how fights are like choreographed and shot to sort of immerse you in the realism of whatever's going on, whereas this is, you know, in that you'll have like shaky cam stuff and, you know, and really sort of feeling like you're in it with the characters. This is a more classically composed sword fight, where the camera just kind of sits back and stays still, and it lets the sword fighters, you know, sort of, you know, move within the frame, and it's just a whole different thing. It's from a different age, and I think that's what's so beautiful about it. So yeah, even the stuff on the set that you can tell isn't quite real, it's like it just adds to the beauty of it, because it makes it feel like a fantasy film of old, you know. And I love it.
Yeah, I think that is part of its charm as well. Like, you know, you know me, I loathe like the cinema sins mentality of like, see, you can see this mistake. This movie is bad. And like, and there are the things that I notice are because I've watched the movie 1,000 times. Like when they go to the edge of the cliff and they're looking down at the Dread Pirate Roberts, like you can see that the rocks under their feet are kind of bouncing, which like rocks would not do. But again, I don't care about that because the power of the story and the earnestness of the filmmaking is so great. And I'm glad you mentioned the sword fight, because it is an amazing sword fight between two very skilled combatants. You know, you feel that they are both masters, as Humperdinck later says. And this is another one of those elements that I discovered later. I was like, I really love this sword fight. I wonder who the sword choreographer was, the sword master, and it's Bob Anderson, who was also worked on the lightsaber duels on the Star Wars original trilogy. And I'm like, no wonder I love this so much.
Yeah. God, I'm looking at yeah, I mean, not only that, but like,
and the Mask of Zorro.
Okay, cinema career that spanned more than 50 years and included such films as Star Wars, Highlander, The Three Musketeers, The Princess Bride, The Mask of Zorro, The Lord of the Rings. You know, this guy pretty much
defines cinematic
worked on, you know, if you look up sword fighting in film in the dictionary, you know, his picture is right there. You know, it's so yeah, and it's funny because that was something that I was very aware of watching documentaries when I was growing up, from even stuff, you know, talking about, you know, something that's mentioned on there was Highlander. I remember, listening to interviews about not only the original film, but the television series, and then watching documentaries about Star Wars and then Lord of the Rings, and realizing that, I hear this name Bob Anderson quite a lot. And yeah, it's they went to the best. And then that's why, like, if you wanted to have sword fighting in your movie, that was who you went to.
Yeah. And this is a great one, not only just in terms of the expert craftsmanship, but obviously the character dynamic between Wesley / the Dread Pirate Roberts and Inigo, and the fact that they both start out with using their left hands, because otherwise it will be over too quickly, and then we get the great twist and turns of, like, where they're calling out and complimenting the use of their of the different styles that they're using, and then all building to the moment. But I know something you don't know. I am not left-handed. You are truly amazing, but I have something that you don't know. I'm not left-handed either. And so yeah, it just obviously, when you see the interplay between the two, like, even though they're adversaries at this moment, like, the way that they're talking makes it clear that, like, when they become allies later, that, like, why they're so well matched. The whole, like, you seem a decent fellow, I hate to kill you. You seem a decent fellow, I hate to die.
Yeah, it's just their wonderful. It's the interplay. When the Man in Black is just hanging there on the rocks, and he's like, slow going. Look, this is not as easy as it looked, so I'd appreciate it if you wouldn't distract me. Sorry.
Thank you.
I do not suppose you could speed things up. But if you're in such a hurry, you could lower a rope or a tree branch or find something useful to do. Still got some rope up here, but I do not think you would accept my help, since I'm only waiting around to kill you. That does put a damper on our relationship. But I promise you and promise not to kill you until you reach the top. That's very comforting, but I'm afraid you'll just have to wait. I hate waiting. I can give you my word as a Spaniard. No good. I've known too many Spaniards. Isn't there any way you trust me? Nothing comes to mind. I swear on the soul of my father, Inigo Montoya, you will reach the top. You will reach the top alive. Throw me
the rope. Yes, that actually, like, again, that is a textbook example of the movie blending comedy with perfect sincerity, because it's just witty banter back and forth. But then the moment that Inigo actually, says, like, he will swear on the soul of his father, and the Dread Pirate Roberts, Wesley, takes his word on it, and then when they're at to the top waiting there, this is where we actually get an absolutely beautiful moment of sincerity in Mandy Patinkin's performance, where he tells the story of his father and the six-fingered man. And we get our first rendition of the all-time famous movie line of, hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die.
Right here. I do not mean to pry, but you don't by any chance happen to have 6 fingers on your right hand?
Do you always begin a
conversation? My father was slaughtered by a 6-fingered man. He was a great sword maker, my father. When the 6-fingered man appeared and requested special sword, my father took the job. He slaved a year before it was done. And remember, got the musical score coming in at this point. Shows him the sword. I've never seen its equal. The 6-fingered man returned and demanded it, but at 1/10 his promised price. My father refused. Without a word, the 6-fingered man slashed him through the heart. I loved my father, so naturally I challenged his murderer to a duel. I failed. 6-fingered man leave me alive, but he gave me these. How old were you? I was 11 years old. When I was strong enough, I dedicated my life to the study of fencing. So the next time we meet, I will not fail. I will go up to the six-fingered man and say, "Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die." So wonderful, so perfect.
Yeah, just brilliant writing, and obviously incredible performance from Mandy Patinkin there. Yeah, he is, this is really where you like, because you can almost see it, especially now knowing Count Rugen as we do, we can visualize, even though they don't like show us a flashback, you can visualize him cutting down Inigo's father Domingo, and in a young Inigo, like his grief and his rage, and trying to duel this older man at 11 years old, and then the 20 years, as he says, like the constant refrain of that it's been 20 years that he's living
You've done nothing but study sword play. It's been 20 years. Or was it?
You see, I cannot find him. I
just starting to lose confidence.
Yeah, there's not a lot. I just work for Vizzini to pay the bills. There's not a lot of money in revenge. Yeah, again, so it goes from humor to incredible sincerity, and then right back to humor, and it's just effortless.
Oh God, yeah, it's. Yeah, I want to highlight just like how amazing the writing of this film is. Just, as you say, going back and forth between, emotional pathos and like just hilarious comedy, and never and maintaining a, sort of singular tone throughout the film. It's just a master stroke of pulling this off, and that is both down to William Goldman, but also obviously someone who we haven't really mentioned that much as of yet, but we should, which is the director, Rob Reiner.
Yes,
because he's the one steering the ship, and the one who's really responsible for getting that tone right. And it's just, and talk about a director who has sort of swung that pendulum between like different styles in his movies. The fact that he can do something like this and then turn around a couple years later and do A Few Good Men, it's just absolutely amazing. It's so having all these people work together, not to mention, as we've been talking about, all the actors performing the lines, and and getting, delivering on all the promise of the script and the direction and all that. It's just, this is a case where everybody's coming together to deliver an absolutely stunning final product.
I mean, and obviously, I'm very glad you mentioned Rob Reiner, because he is considered one of our, great directors, and definitely, his heyday was in the 80s and 90s. Like when you look at the run he had in, like, starting in 1984, starting with This Is Spinal Tap, and then following it up with The Sure Thing, Stand By Me, The Princess Bride, and then going on to do When Harry Met Sally, Misery, A Few Good Men, and on and on and on. You're like, that is one of the more impressive runs that any director has ever had.
Oh, and I do want to mention one of the more unappreciated ones on that list, which I personally adore, which is 1995's The American President.
Yes, yeah,
I'm a huge fan of. It's quite a versatile director, definitely.
Yeah, and again, this is a little bit like, he hasn't done a lot of like other films exactly like The Princess Bride, but then again, The Princess Bride is kind of a singular movie in many ways, even though it's it's a fantasy and it's a romance and it's a comedy and it's and all those things have been done, but like just the unique alchemy that this movie has is really only possible because of the specific ingredients that it had in terms of the combination of the writing and direction, but these wonderful performances and the craftsmanship as well. It is a movie that is, as I think I had said at the beginning, it was made at a very specific time, but it feels timeless because of just with the magic that was created by those elements.
Yeah, let's jump ahead quickly to in talking about the standoff between the Man in Black and Vicini.
Oh yes.
Just wait till I get going. Where was I? Australia. That's right, Australia. No, it's just, yeah. This is Vicini thinks he's an absolute genius, and really, he's not.
One of my all-time favorite deadpan line readings is when Wesley says, "Truly, you have a dizzying intellect." Because as he says, Plato, Aristotle, Socrates. Have you heard of them? Yes, morons. You're just like, clearly, if they were morons, then Vicini is something else.
Oh God, yeah. Yeah, and so they agree to the battle of wits. Yeah, I love that. So I challenge you to a battle of wits. For the princess, to the death, then I accept.
Oh my goodness.
And the fact that his and the back and forth is wonderful, where he's just saying, all I have to do is divine what I know of you, when would a man like you put poison into his own goblet, and just all this back and forth is all a way of leading up to his ultimate play, which is, oh my God, what in the world can that be?
Oh God, yeah. I mean, Wesley is not wrong in that scene. Like, what Vicini is actually trying to do is to trick him into giving something away, but he's not being very subtle about it. So he obviously, the Dread Pirate Roberts gives him nothing, and so he is left with, frankly, Vicini. One hates to speak ill of the dead, but we will, because it's Vicini. He's not the nicest guy. One of the stupidest plays that you could ever imagine to try and get Wesley to the Dread Pirate Roberts to look away, and honestly, Wesley, he falls for it, but he doesn't really fall for it, because obviously he's rigged the game. He's just waiting for Vicini to freaking, go through his bullshit and then drink the poison and die.
Well, no, he doesn't but he doesn't actually fall for it anyway. It's like some hilarious overact on his part. I don't see anything.
Yeah, no, again, he's putting on a show here because he's rigged the game, and so he just needs Vicini to think that he's in control, and then ultimately this is a game that he can't lose. Wesley can't lose because, as he says, he's worked up his immunity to iocane powder, which is honestly it's one of the best. We're used to it now because we've seen this movie and loved the movie so many times, but it actually is this is an actual genius play from Wesley. And I remember when I got, because I would,
but it's also hilarious. Just it's absurd in its own way. Just apparently, he's done this just so that he has this in his back pocket to play in a situation just like this. No,
It's
fun.
funny though. And yes, it's like it is a very specific situation when you will ever need to do this again. But pirates with dangerous lives. Maybe he needed to. He didn't want to.
Well, no,
pirates with
this is something that I was actually talking about. Maybe it wasn't with you. It might have been last week when I was talking with our friends about this. Like, what's so hilarious about so many parts of this movie is that there are so many contrived moments where, like, a character knows how to do something for the convenience of the scene at hand, or that a character knows something plot related that they could not possibly know. And because of the tone that the movie has set up, it just works.
Yeah.
It doesn't make logical sense, but you just go with it because the movie has set you up to sort of be willing to not even suspend your disbelief, but just like you're like, no, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And this is one of those things where it's like I spent the past few years building up an immunity to iocane powder. So, and part of you is like, what? And the other part of you is like, okay, yeah.
It's as you said, very specific situation. But like the first time I watched the movie and I didn't know that was the trick, I was playing the same, like, what's the game here? And then when I get the revelation, I was like, that's good. That's so good. and it's all the more satisfying because, again, Vicini is such a pompous buffoon, and his death scene is honestly one of the most hysterical. Never go against a Sicilian when death is on the line.
Death is on the
line. Again, like that is very broad comedy, but it works so well. Again, images you can hear.
Oh God. Oh. Okay, and then and should be said that while these scenes are going on, we are also getting our first real introduction to Humperdinck. As he is going along on the hunt in a series of progressively more hilarious like asides where first we see him going over the ground where where Wesley and Inigo have fought, and he's like, there was a mighty duel, but then the next scene we get is so funny where he's going over the ground where Wesley and Fezzik fought, and he's like, someone has beaten a giant. Oh God.
And his constant refrains, especially knowing what we know later about, like, that he's like, if Buttercup was here and she was alive, or at least she was an hour ago, if she is otherwise, when I find her, I shall be very put. But in particular, that scene where he's doing the tracking, like back and forth of the duel, like, I mean, it does show that he is actually a somewhat capable hunter. But anytime I watch that scene now, all I can think of is the Aragorn's tracking of the hobbits in the Two Towers, the much more impressive tracking where he basically tracks them over a torn up battlefield, but can still tell exactly where it was that they were lying. And here Humperdinck is just kind of like dancing back and forth across their footprints, and I'm like, this is a little bit less impressive, but it's still funny.
And so we've got that cut against, now Wesley is making off with Buttercup. Buttercup doesn't yet know that it's Wesley, and Wesley is he's coming from the perspective of thinking that Buttercup actually betrayed him. So this is him kind of sussing out what the situation actually is. And it gives Robin Wright a real chance to play off of her feelings for, for what she was going through after, after Wesley's death. And of course it all builds up to when she shoves him down the mountainside. So you can die too for all I care. And then the wonderful "as you wish." Oh my Wesley, what have I done? And then she follows him.
Yeah, and that is a steep hill. He very well could have died going down that, but obviously they do not. But I do want to call out even before that, like that scene where they're like, as you said, Wesley is in disguise, and he is kind of trying to suss out, rather cruelly in certain respects, if Buttercup has essentially gone on and married Humperdinck, willing or going to engage to Humperdinck willingly, and like, did she basically just forget him? And obviously she very much has not. But I think Wesley has to, go through that process in order to really kind of know for sure, because he has suffered. He is, even though he is not actually he, like, the story that he tells her about him encountering the dread pirate Roberts, and the fact that Roberts ultimately let him live because of what he did, which was he just said, please, I have to live, what's so important, true love, but true love is only, true and special if it's shared between the two people. And if Buttercup has not, been faithful to it, then essentially everything Wesley has done has been for naught. So he has to know. But we get to see that, Buttercup is was truly devastated by Wesley's death, and effectively the reason that she is, in this engagement to Humperdinck at all is because she kind of doesn't, after she thought he was dead, life had essentially lost its meaning for her, and Humperdinck had the right to choose her as his bride, but she basically is like, there's no other man that I will love, so it just means almost nothing to her. But in particular, like when she's talking about, the fact that, like, her truest love was a farm boy, poor and perfect, with eyes like the sea after the storm, and then we get the close up on, Wesley's eyes, which she hasn't recognized yet, but but you can tell that, like, he's starting to reckon with the fact that, yes, this is the same woman that he loves. But the fact that he does still, like, twist the knife a little bit, like, and doesn't let her in on it immediately. That's an element of the movie where you can wonder, like, well, why is he doing this? But I think it's just to let us know that, like, he has to be sure. He has to know if this the love that he thought they have is still.
To be fair, I will say, like, this scene in the book he's even harsher in the book. So this is actually, and I dare say there's even a bit of violence.
Yeah, I was gonna say there are a couple elements of this scene that are definitely dated, like the fact that Wesley threatens almost to strike her.
And I believe in the book he actually does.
Okay,
and that's something that I'm very happy they changed for the film. Otherwise, there would be much more of an issue with this moment in the film. So I'm glad they changed that. But yeah, it's no movie is perfect, and we did talk about, this is still a movie of its time, even though, I think it continues to enchant generation after generation. But yeah, it's this is probably the one scene that threatens to, trying to go a little too far into sort of established norms of, of the time period. But it still doesn't go too far with that, which I'm happy about. So, but that doesn't go on for too long. We do get the reunion of the two, Lovebirds once he does finally, when she she gives as good as she gets in terms of, he sort of, gets angry with her. She gets angry in return, and then it's that shove down the the cliff that I think finally like gets him to drop his sort of moodiness about the whole thing. And yeah, just that fall down the mountainside is just so hilarious. And
yeah,
because they are really tumbling down that mountainside.
yeah. Again, it's a very, very steep hill, but it ultimately culminates with, when they are reunited at the bottom, they have one of just, again, it becomes sweepingly romantic again with the whole Wesley come over and saying, "Can you move at all?" And she's like, "Can I move? You're alive. If you want, I could fly." And then they just embrace. And this is where Mark Knopfler's, love theme comes in like full blast. And it's just, gorgeous and beautiful.
And then my favorite lines, which is, "I told you I would always come for you. Why didn't you wait for me?" "Well, you were dead."
And then smooth Wesley, "Death cannot stop true love. All it can do is delay it for a while. I will never doubt again. There will never be a need."
Oh.
and then they're off into the kissing, and then of course Fred Savage has to interrupt. It's like, "Oh, they're kissing again. Come on. Can you skip this part?" And we're like, no.
They're kissing again. Do we have to hear the kissing part? Someday you may not mind so much. Let's skip ahead to the fire swamp. That sounded good. All right, you're sick. I'll humor you.
Yeah, and the day of not minding so much is going to be in like 45 minutes when this movie is over.
That was also foreshadowing for me.
Yeah, exactly.
One day you may not mind so much. I can say without a shadow of the doubt that came fully to fruition for me. And to be fair, I was already like. I was 19 years old when I saw this, so I was already well on my way to liking that stuff. But yeah, so and then of course, again, we can just quote every line of this movie, and they're running into the fire swamp, and Buttercup goes, "We'll never survive." Nonsense. You're only saying that because no one ever has.
Yeah, no, this sequence of the movie is just Cary Elwes at his absolute, most roguish, charming Errol Flynn best. Like every line out of his mouth and every like smile and confident, twirl is just like note perfect. And especially like when like they enter the fire swamp and it looks terrifying and good, and he's like, "It's not half bad." And Robin Wright just gives one of the all-time great looks of ingenuity. He's like, "I'm not saying I'd like to build a summer home here, but the trees are actually quite lovely."
And she gives almost this head shake, like, "You better drop this Dread Pirate Roberts bullshit real quick. It's me." Yeah, no, it's great. And then, just, and then we can talk about the fact that, this is where we find out the secret of the Dread Pirate Roberts. And, he's talking about all that and that he'll turn it over to somebody else now. But really the joy of this scene is all the traps of the fire swamp. And, of course, but the big thing about this whole scene though is, while Wesley is rescuing Buttercup from, the quicksand or whatever, we just see this gigantic rat just walk by. Nothing is said about it. We just see him walking around, sniffing, and then heading off.
Yeah.
And we think that's going to be it. And then they come up out of the ground and, and, oh, they're okay. They're safe. But then Wesley can see that these giant rats are just all over the place, and then he's saying, "No, we have already succeeded." What are the three? Terrors, the fire swamp. One the flame spurts. No problem. And you were clever enough to discover the I don't know what he calls them, the
lightning sand. Yeah.
the lightning sand. So in the future we can avoid that as well. Wesley, what about the RUSs? Rodents of unusual size? I don't think they exist. Only rodents and then be attacked by one.
And it's all the more hilarious because he had literally just seen them like 2 seconds ago and is putting on the show for Buttercup. But again, it's part of his charming act, like the fact that after her dress catches fire from the flame spurts, he puts it out and he's just smiling. It's like, well, that was an adventure. and here the RUOSs is a little bit more dangerous. And this sequence actually is, for a kid, I would say, actually kind of terrifying because a giant rat, we talked about, the fact that normal sized rats can be, freaky enough at times. A giant rat with these honking teeth that's like actually like biting into him and tearing. I'm like, I would not want to be dealing with something like this, no matter, even if I had been, trained in all the various sword forms, because
the giant rats of Gotham and Joker are nothing compared to these guys.
No, exactly.
It's just, it's it's so, again, like I keep using the word, but I mean it in the best, kindest, most possible way. But these things are ridiculous. It's like guys in giant, rat costumes. And it's so wonderful. It's just one of those things where you just you have to laugh at it. And yeah, I'm sure for little kids it's really scary and terrifying, but it's just sort of hilarious to an adult, but in the best possible way, because just like they are dangerous, and they're treated as so, in the film, but you can't escape the fact of what they look like, and it's just so great. It's it's like watching the opening of 2001 from Modern Sensibility with the people in the ape costumes, and you're like, yeah, I know those are people in dressed up as apes, and it's that clearly these are people in rat costumes. But it's just taken to the most absurd level imaginable, and it fills me with so much joy I cannot describe.
Yeah, it is part of the charm, and like this is one of the elements where obviously, like, if this movie were made today, the rats would probably be like CGI, but because this is a moment where
it would lose something.
It would lose something, absolutely. Like this is part of the charm. It almost looks like a stop motion kind of creation, and it's like they still feel like real. So I just. This sequence, again, the reason I said it was terrifying is because I was scared of the sequence when I saw this first at 9 and 10. Now I just find it, as you said, kind of, darkly humorous and joyful, even though it is still dangerous.
God. But yeah, and this is one of the moments where I talked about where the music threatens to get really dramatic, but then it's kind of fun too, where especially the moment where Wesley is stabbing the RES, and it's like the music is going along with his sword jabs, it's going dum dum dum. It's wonderful. It's absolutely perfect. So then they come out of the fire swamp. Everything's gonna be great and happy, but they're cut off by Humperdinck and Rugen. and Humperdinck's men, and you know, it's getting really dramatic, and Humperdinck's going, I tell you for the last time, surrender. And he goes, death first. And then Buttercup decides to play her card, which is to turn herself in and surrender to Humperdinck to help save Wesley, which is, it's heart-wrenching because it's, on the one hand, where she's just said that, they've just had this reaffirmation of their love and connection, and that, he's saying, there's never going to be a need, they're never going to be a party again. So she is willingly separating them, but to save his life. And it's, of course she makes the deal for his life to be spared. Humperdinck does not plan on doing that in any way, shape, or form. And which leads to a great exchange between Wesley and Rugen. Come, sir, we must get you to your ship. We are men of action. Lies do not become us. Well said, sir. And then, of course, the reveal of the the six-fingered hand. There's something wrong. You have 6 fingers on your right hand. Someone was looking for you. And apparently that's Rugen is sensitive about his fingers because he immediately knocks Wesley out with the hilt of his sword.
Yeah, you get the sense that Rugen is, there's probably part of a reason of why he is the way he is, because he is a sadist, and so is Humperdinck. Like, one of the little exchanges I love, and dark exchanges, but when Buttercup is making her Humperdinck promise to take Wesley to his ship, he's like, "May I live 1,000 years and never hunt again." As soon as we're out of sight, take him away and throw him in the pit of despair. I swear it will be done. After kind of echoing what Humperdinck's like, I swear it will be done. But it's just this sequence. I do love the moment of both the humor of it, when Wesley is being defiant, basically like, we know the terrors of the fire swamp. We can live here quite happily for some time. So if you ever feel like dying, feel free to visit. But then also the sincerity of it, where as you said, the reason Buttercup does this is to save Wesley's life, because he would happily die for her in this moment. And when she says, I would die, I thought you died once and it nearly destroyed me. I could not live if you died again, not when I could save you. And it's the right decision ultimately for this moment, even though they will now have to go through an additional suffering before they can finally be together.
Yeah. And this feels like a good point to pause for now and do our mid-roll. Anything else you want to mention about these past couple scenes before we do the mid-roll?
No, I mean, obviously, again, we could quote every line of dialogue, but I think we've summed it up, pretty well. So this is our halfway point. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight. It's just, it's so much fun talking about this movie. I want to talk about what we have coming down the line. So next week we're going to have a lot of fun because we're going to talk about the 4-episode finale of Star Wars: The Clone Wars, otherwise known as The Siege of Mandalore, which I've been wanting to do a stream like this for a while, where we just focus on, because I did Clone Wars streams over on Here Be Dragons, but this stream is going to focus exclusively on the finale arc. Which for my money is one of the best Star Wars films ever made. And I'm still waiting for the time where they edit it together as a film and show it in theaters, because I think that would be amazing to see. But we'll have to hold on to that for some point in the future. Maybe they'll surprise us with that at the upcoming, as an announcement at the upcoming celebration. Who knows? I don't know.
We'll see. But yeah, after that, we are going to be taking a week off because I'll be out of town. But it'll only be for 1 week this time because we'll be back. After that, on May 4th, we'll be talking about the first 6 episodes of the second season of Andor, a Star Wars story. And looking forward to that, although it's just gonna take a lot not being able to talk about that the very week, the first episodes drop. So, but we'll hold firm. Now, what we're going to be doing the week after that is slightly complicated by some news that's just come out. I think we will probably stick to our plans, but like I said, it is complicated somewhat. We're slated on May 11th to talk about the 20th anniversary of the Kingdom of Heaven Director's Cut. However, just like I want to say a week or two after that, the film is being re-released for one night only in cinemas. I don't know how wide that release is going to be. I hope it'll be fairly wide so I can go see it. But if so, the timing is a little off there. And then shortly after, the remastered 4K Blu-ray is coming out as well. But just because of the way we've got things arranged after that, I feel like we should probably just keep things as they are. It would be really nice to watch this in its remastered form, especially in theaters, prior to our conversation. But I don't know. We can talk about that after the stream today. But I have a feeling that we might just want to keep things as they are, just because I don't know how we would. Because it would kind of complicate our wrap-up stream for Andor Season 2, and I don't want to move that. I think we have to keep that where it is. So, I mean, oh no, I'll have to watch Kingdom of Heaven a couple of times in the span of a couple of weeks. Oh no, how tragic for me. But yeah, no, I'm really excited that they're doing something big for the anniversary of that film. And speaking of which, I should also say that I mentioned this on the Slack, but I don't think I talked about it here. They announced and put up for sale on the La La Land Records website the 25th anniversary soundtrack for Gladiator, which we've talked about a number of times, me hoping that was going to be coming, and it is. And now I will finally get to listen to the full uncut score for that movie, which is set to arrive on my doorstep sometime this coming week. So I'm very excited about that. So I will be gushing about that next week, I'm sure.
I feel like you almost spoke that into existence, Gwen.
I've been waiting for that for so long. And one of the samples for the soundtrack that they put up was a particular piece that I've been waiting for years, which is the opening of the film, which they had truncated on the original soundtrack. And it's the rendition of the main theme when Maximus starts walking amongst his troops. It was always a shorter version of it on the original soundtrack. But finally, this anniversary soundtrack has the full version of it, which it always mystified me why they shortened it on the original soundtrack, because at most it's like 25 extra seconds of music. And the original album only ran for like 60 minutes. It didn't even take up the full capacity of the CD. So it drove me crazy that for 25 years, that's one of the most like sort of important pieces of music for the film was shortened on the soundtrack album. But you know what? the turmoil of waiting for that piece is almost over. And I will have it in my hands soon enough. So yeah, so we'll be talking about that, and then the week after that, we're gonna finish up our coverage of Andor season 2, and this is where we're changing things up a bit. I don't remember if we talked about this or not on the channel, but originally for May 25th, we were going to talk about the original Star Wars, but then it occurred to me that it makes more sense having the fact that we'll have just finished Andor season 2 to instead talk about Rogue One and go straight into that from the end of Andor, and then we can go on to the original Star Wars trilogy after that. It didn't make much sense to hold off on Rogue One and go back to it later. So I think we'll have a real fun time going right into that. I'm really interested to see how it all syncs up. And then we have some other stuff to talk about after that. I think starting in the month of June, we will talk about the original Star Wars trilogy. I have some other possibilities lined up, which I see that you put in some stuff there as a possibility as well.
I saw that you had added some things to the Google Doc, and we don't need to announce those because we can talk about it. But yeah, there was one movie in particular that I wanted to make sure we talked about, and then when I saw that you had added a couple there, I was like, that might actually work out. But we'll discuss that later. For now,
yeah, we'll talk about that. The only thing that I will say, because I feel pretty firm on it, but it's off further in the future, which is all the way when we get to July, is the 25th anniversary of the original X-Men film, which I'm really looking forward to discussing. So yeah.
All the more so because they did indeed announce that certain X-Men cast members are going to be coming back in a little film called Avengers Doomsday next year. So
yeah. Yeah, the fact that I know like a lot of MCU fans are like complaining about the fact that there aren't more like actual Avengers from the other Avengers movies, and I'm like, no, this is going to be an Avengers movie headlined by the X-Men and the Fantastic Four. This is the Avengers movie I've been waiting for. So yeah, I'm quite pumped up about that. So I'm sure we'll talk about that, and yeah, and we'll talk about some of these other things because there's another movie I want to slot in there somewhere soon, which we do not have listed, so we may have to we may have to talk about that, but we'll see. Yeah. Anyway, so that gives you all an idea of what's coming ahead. I'm trying to think of anything else that I wanted to mention before we plunge back into the movie. The only other thing I'll say is I've in terms of like Star Wars stuff, I want to say I have been reading. I've been continuing to read the book, The Reign of the Empire, The Mask of Fear. And it's really good. if y'all aren't reading that, you should give it a read, especially leading up to Andor season 2. I'm going to try and finish it before the new season starts. But man, especially having context for some of the things that Mon Mothma has been through. God, it's heavy. I wonder if like any of that stuff will be referenced in the new season, or if it'll just be something extra for those of us who are in the know. But it's very powerful stuff for the character, and yeah, so I heavily recommend it.
But I was doing so much other stuff, I didn't have a chance to crack it, but I will start it before Andor season 2, and hopefully by the time we talked about it, I'll be at least a good way into it, because I am looking forward to that book. And we'll also, we'll have by next weekend, we'll also have had, Star Wars Celebration, and we can talk about some of the stuff that they may be announcing there. They gave us a surprise announcement just a couple days ago when they announced they are dropping a new season of the Tales series with the Tales of the Underworld. It looks like this is where we're getting our Asajj Ventress new content, as well as Cad Bane. So I'm less confident now that it'll be the new Asajj Ventress animated TV show, but who knows? Maybe it's just...
I felt that way, but then our friend Ken Knapsack gave me some hope, just saying I wouldn't necessarily that he wouldn't necessarily, say that that's for sure, which is to say that he doesn't know anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, as he says, he doesn't know anything, but he's heard something. So, take that as you will. But it would be nice if this is just actually a lead in to something else. But I don't know. We'll find out soon enough, I'm sure.
We will.
I just want to say, I like the more I've sat with it, the more happy I am. Because initially I wasn't sure how I felt about the casting of Reed Richards, just because I have my sort of image of who these characters are, going all the way back to when I watched the animated series of the Fantastic Four when I was a little kid, and so I'd never quite pictured the Viper as as Mr. Fantastic. But the more I've sat with it, the more I'm like, no, he's going to be great. And I love Pedro so much. So I think they found a really good cast with this group of people, and I'm just really anxious to see the movie, and I hope they've done a great job, because I'd love to see. I'd love to see the Fantastic Four finally sort of step into the limelight in a big way, in the way that they haven't gotten to before in the other various iterations, and so I'm looking forward to it, and looking forward to the return of the X-Men.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so let's dive back in. We've spent enough time on the mid-roll. So we kind of start off the next section of the film with Wesley waking up in the pit of despair. The pit of despair.
Think about trying to escape.
Talking about as we were saying, great characters who are not necessarily like big central characters. They only have a little bit to do, but the albino is one of those characters played by Mel Smith, which I've always loved that reveal of of his actual voice.
Yeah.
And the reveal of the machine that sucks life away, and but only up to a point. You can be revived with a special chocolate coated pill.
Yes. So. All this is all very scientific, but it is a certain, again, intimidating quality for a certain age, but also just kind of leaning into the absurdity a little bit with the sheer elaborate nature of the torture device. And in this sequence, like when Wesley's like, so it's to be torture, and the albino's like, yeah. I can cope with torture. No.
You don't believe me? Yeah.
You survived
the fire swamp. You must be very brave. But no one withstands the machine.
Yes. Yeah, so we'll get into that more later. I did want to very briefly go back to there's a scene where Buttercup has a nightmare, effectively, that Humperdinck's father, the king, dies, and Humperdinck is crowned, and then she has to marry him, and then she gets, booed by the wonderful old woman who is just bow down to the queen of muck and slime and filth. Boo, boo.
Boo. Boo.
But the reason I want to highlight it is because it's a section of one of the absolute greatest interjections from Little Fred Savage when he's like, "No, Grandpa, you read the story wrong. She doesn't marry Humperdinck. She marries Wesley." And he's like, "You're getting very invested in this story, aren't you?" And then when it's revealed that it was a nightmare, we get the voiceover from Red Fred Savage. "See, I told you she'd never marry that old rotten Humperdinck. Yes, you're very smart. Shut up."
God. Yeah, and so there's a great scene between Buttercup and Humperdinck, just where she wants to she tells him that she'll never marry him, and that she'd rather die, and so he feigns that he'll send off messages on his 4 fastest ships to find Wesley, knowing that he has Wesley in in the dungeon,
Yeah.
And then of course has the line, if that doesn't work, please consider me as as an alternative to suicide, trying to play the nice guy when and of course this is where leads into the scene where we find out that he's the one who's been behind in the attempt on her life, and that it's all part of his plan to have her killed, now on the wedding night.
Yeah. So that they can go to war with Gilder, which seems to be what he's really, he really wants. But and we get the great exchange, as you had mentioned earlier, about "Are you coming down into the pit?" And then "Tyrone, I love watching you work, but I've got my country's 500th anniversary to plan, my wedding to arrange, my wife to murder, and guilt to frame for it. I'm swamped." Get some rest. You haven't got your head. You haven't got
anything. God. Yeah, and so also, what I really want to talk about, because we got the stuff with the machine where and where Wesley's being slowly tortured, but I do want to get to the moment where Humperdinck tells his what would you even call him, his guard or henchman or whatever, to clear out the thieves' forest, and this is all a big sort of to make it look like there was a threat against Buttercup's life, and the guy's like, "My regular enforcers may not be up to the task," and he goes, "Form a brute squad then." Which that of course leads us into, do you think one of the brutes is going to be
of course
Fezzik? And then this leads us into the Thieves' Forest and our reintroduction to both Fezzik and Inigo, and their reunion, and this goes into the stuff you were talking about earlier about Fezzik, taking great care to nurse his friend Inigo back to health.
That their reunion we had touched on earlier is very sweet, but also hilarious.
Oh, we're gonna get
trust
there.
me, we're gonna get to Peter Cook. Trust me, we haven't gotten to him in the movie yet, but he will get his own special section for an absolutely iconic character.
Yeah. Which, by the way, like I don't want to skip too far ahead, but I will say that I never that nenever fails to make me laugh out loud. But yeah. So yeah, and this is the part in the movie where, like, again, I want to say that, and I say this with complete sincerity and love for it, is this is the part in the movie where both Fezzik and Inigo seem to have intricate plot knowledge. That it seems like there's no earthly reason why they should know certain things, and it works perfectly fine. You're like, yeah, no, let's just go with it. Because apparently Fezzik knows all about Count Rugen, as, being the six-fingered man, and then of course in a couple scenes forward, Inigo knows that the Man in Black is, his true love is Buttercup, and
Yep.
he knows his true identity and that whole story, and you're just like, wait, what? But it's just for the sake of the story. You're like, no, I'm with you. Just go. And I think it's one of the more charming parts of this phase of the story, where you're just like, no, I don't care how certain characters know certain things. It just works.
Yeah, it is as you said, it's a convenience, but the movie is so charming that it and has worked so well that they can get away with basically like sweeping this little bit of exposition away in some narration. I kind of, when I think about this, I kind of joke about, like, or think about the fact, like, in the section in Spaceballs where they go back and they watch the movie itself to figure out where the characters are because they're lost. It's like, maybe I don't think that's what happened here, but it's kind of similar.
Oh God, I'm just like, sorry, I know, different movie, and we don't have time to quote too much there, but just like, horrible. Get our copy of Spaceballs the movie. I can't have the movie, and we haven't even finished making it yet. Yes, but there's been there's been a new advancement in home video technology, sir. The movie is out in stores before it's even finished. Nah. Here it is, sir. Spaceballs. Okay, I won't go any further, guys. I swear.
Yeah, no, I have a feeling we may need to do, after we've done all of our Star Wars movie discussions, we may need to do a Spaceballs movie discussion. We've referenced it enough. What are we looking at now, sir? When will then be now? Soon.
Oh God. Okay. Back to this movie. No, there's just like so many beautiful moments when they're reunited. Like after we get the narration, Peter Falk, and then finally Inigo, after having been dunked several times in the water, he's like, enough. Tell me, where's this Ruben so I may kill him? He's in the castle, guarded by 30 men. Yeah. How many could you handle? I don't think more than 10. Leaving 20 for me. I don't think I'd take that many. I need Vizzini. I have no mind for strategy. And and then they deduce that he deduces that he needs the Man in Black.
Yeah. And he's like, but you don't know where he is. Don't bother me with trifles. And then they find the pit of despair immediately, which is great. But
well, yeah, because first they're going through like the town's area, and they hear the scream of of Wesley from as he's getting his life drained, and so clearly Inigo can hear the direction that the scream is coming from. So and then that's when it's like, Yeah, and that's where he's like, his true love is marrying another tonight. So who else has the cause for ultimate suffering?
It's like yes, but also he's having 50 years of his life sucked away by this horrific suction pump, which I don't want to just skip over that because that is actually a scene where we actually see the true sadism of Humperdinck. The fact that Wet Buttercup, once she realizes that Humperdinck has not sent the ships, she insults him, she's like, Wesley will come for me anyway. And then she calls him a coward, and that sets Humperdinck off. I would not say such things if I were you.
And there's also a great moment that's scored by the love theme in that scene where he says, I would not say such things if I were you. And she says, why not? You can't hurt me. Wesley and I are bound by... joined by
the bonds of love.
The bonds of love, and you cannot. I don't know. I don't know the exact wording of it.
You cannot. Yeah, I think it's you cannot break track that, not with 1,000 bloodhounds, and you cannot break it, not with 1,000 swords.
There you go. Yeah. And it's just a beautiful moment, scored beautifully, and almost as if Humperdinck can hear the love theme in the background. He's sent into a rage, and he's even more angry at Wesley, and that's when he resolves just to kill him then and there. And it's all another great moment when then Rudin says, "Not to 50." But then he's like, he's really intrigued by it, and he's writing the definitive work on the subject of pain. This is for posterity. Like the great moment when the torture sequence earlier, where he's sucking 1 year of your life away, and he's like, I might one day go as high as 5, but I really don't know what you would do to you. That would do to you. So be honest, and remember, this is for posterity. How do you feel? Interesting. But yeah, even he is a little freaked out by Humperdinck going all the way to 50. And Humperdinck actually has a very telling line there before that, where he's like, you truly love each other, so you might have been truly happy. Not one couple in 1,000 has that chance, no matter what the storybooks say. So I think that no one will suffer as greatly as you will. So it's, you can tell that this is a case where that Humperdinck knows how, what he is ultimately. And when he's faced with the purity of Wesley and Buttercup's love, it kind of reveals his own ugliness. And that's really what he's lashing out against. But he does so in a very, obviously sadistic and cruel, and reactionary manner. And it's not for nothing that, he kills Wesley effectively, but fortunately, Wesley is only mostly dead. Because of course, it's, Inigo and Fezzik, follow Wesley's streams to the forest where they run into the albino, and
Fezzik jogged his memory.
Fezzik jogged his memory. Sorry, Inigo, I didn't mean to jog him so hard. Inigo, and then there's just that great moment where possibly one of the most beautiful shots in the movie, where Inigo is holding his father's sword and the sunlight is shining, in the back. It's, again, this is such a beautiful film. And he's praying to the spirit of his father for guidance and to guide his sword, and and he thinks it's for naught because the sword just runs into the tree trunk. Little does he know that's the very tree trunk that leads into the dungeon. And then when he leans on the tree, he opens the doorway, and they find Wesley there, looking very dead.
Yeah, and we get another wonderful interjection from Fred Savage. He's like, "No, Grandpa, you read that wrong. Wesley can't be dead." And he's like, and then he's like, "Well, who kills Humperdinck? Nobody kills him. He lives." Jesus, Grandpa, what'd you read me this story for? And then Grandpa, you're sick, and this is getting, you're taking this story very seriously. I
think we better stop. No, please, I'm okay.
Again, very, very relatable.
Yeah, so great. Yeah. Well, the Montoyas have never taken defeat easily. Do you have any money? I have a little. I just hope it's enough to buy a miracle. And this is just leads us to one of the great entrances in the film, which is just the opening of, the part of the door and the what? And we're greeted to the great Billy Crystal as Miracle Max.
This might be one of the great one scene performances in cinematic history. It is just, every line of his is just gold.
I just I adore it because doesn't matter how much makeup you put on this guy, you can never not recognize the voice of Billy Crystal.
Yeah,
and it's so wonderful.
I love that they don't even try to disguise it. He's basically just doing his, New York accent in this He's
well, yeah, no, it's and that's why one of my funnest subgenres is bringing in Billy Crystal to be Billy Crystal in the most inappropriate places. And this is one of them. And then also he plays the gravedigger in Kenneth Branagh's Hamlet. And he does a great job reciting the lines, but he's speaking as Billy Crystal. And that's what makes it a lot of fun. And so it's just I just love when he's standing there, he lifts up Wesley's arm, lets it drop. He goes, I've seen worse. Just so, and also I want to make sure we mention Carol Kane playing Valerie, his wife.
Oh yeah, and this is another one of those if pictures could talk. Have fun storming the castle. Do you think it'll work? It'll take a miracle.
Bye. Oh God, yeah. I just it's so good. Let me see if any of the quotes are on here for this scene, because I can probably recite some stuff from memory, but I'd love to have it just to read off.
Start with one where they asked him if he's got any money. He's like, I've never worked for 65. I've never worked for so little, except once. That was a very noble cause. This is noble, sir. His wife is crippled. His children are on the brink of starvation. Are you a rotten liar? I need him to help avenge my father. Murdered these 20 years. Your first story was better.
Here's another one. He probably owes you money, huh? I'll ask him. He's dead. He can't talk. Woo-hoo! Look who knows so much. It just so happens that your friend here is only mostly dead. There's a big difference between mostly dead and all dead. Mostly dead is slightly alive. With all dead, there's usually only one thing you can do. What's that? Go through his clothes and look for loose change. Okay, here we go. Are you the Miracle Max who worked for the king all those years? The king's stinking son fired me, and thank you so much for bringing up such a painful subject. While you're at it, why don't you give me a nice paper cut and pour lemon juice on it? We're closed.
and also when he's first examining him and he's being very deliberate, and then it goes just sir, we're in a terrible It's like you don't rush a miracle man. You rush a miracle man, you get rotten miracles.
Oh God, I just have like, just when you think that this movie can't get any more like joyful and fun, this scene comes on and it's so wonderful and charming and fun and I can say completely that I think, like, and it's the nature of actors and celebrities that we form close bonds with these people that we've never known, but I think, and it's funny, I was thinking about who else fits this mold, and it was actually a very close dear friend of Billy Crystal, Robin Williams, fits this as well, where there are certain like celebrities, and in this case, comedians who I love, like, that I have this like really super deep affection for, and Billy Crystal is one of those people where I like see him on the screen and I just light up because I know he's going to fill me with joy. And so an appearance by Billy Crystal in any movie, it automatically like upgrades it into the stratosphere. and so just when this comes at this point in the movie, I'm just like, yes inject this into my veins. It's so wonderful, and I love it.
And as you said, let's not forget that Carol Kane is also wonderful in this scene. Like when after they learn that mostly dead Wesley has said that the reason he needs to live is true love, and we see Billy Crystal's eyes go wide, and because he recognizes that is a noble cause. But then he's like, true love is the greatest thing in the world, except for a nice mutton MLT, mutton, lettuce, and tomato sandwich, where the mutton is nice and lean and the tomatoes are ripe. They're so perky. I love that.
But that's not what he said.
He simply said to blave, which is which also means to bluff. And then his wife's like, "Oh, get away from me, witch! Another witch, I'm your wife." After what you just said, I don't know if I even want to be that anymore.
Which, and I should say, this was actually the first time I've ever saw Carol Kane in anything. Contrary to Billy Crystal, whom I had known through many things, this was the first time I'd seen her in anything. So I think I'm always going to know her as as Valerie, the wife of Miracle Max. But I've since like she's actually in the show Star Trek Strange New Worlds, and as soon as she popped up in that, I was like, I know who that is. It's sort of, and then of course she's talking to him about the fact that, hey, ever since Prince Humperdinck fired him, his confidence has been shot. And then Inigo picks up on this, and it's like, this is Buttercup's true love. If you save him, he will stop Humperdinck's wedding. I save him, Humperdinck suffers humiliations galore. That is a noble cause. I'm on the job.
And yes, and then we get the miracle cup, the chocolate covered miracle pill,
Chocolate
and it goes
go down smoothly.
But you have to wait 15 minutes for full potency, and you shouldn't go swimming for what would you say? An hour, a good hour.
Oh God, they're so great.
Yeah. And that's what we mentioned earlier, culminating with like, again, one of those lines that has almost transcended the movie, as iconic as it is, when they go out, have fun storming the castle. People just will use that in almost any other context.
I remember, I don't know if I had heard the line before I saw the movie, but it became very evident that once I talked to people about the movie, like that was one of the things that constantly got thrown out at me. If I said like Princess Bride, then all of a sudden I'd just hear somebody burst out, "Have fun storming the castle." So yeah, it is like one of the most iconic, parts of the movie, and I feel like it has permeated, the culture. Like so many, there's a lot of things from this movie that have obviously the Inconceivable, is another one of those things.
And then like Montoya, yeah, but
yeah. So that leads us into the final act of the movie as Inigo and Fezzik, carry Wesley to the castle, and there's that great end. Has it been 15 minutes? We can't wait any longer. And I love the magic sound effect every time you see the pill. Like Inigo like kisses it before he puts it in his mouth, and you hear the little tingling, the sound effect. Yeah, and then Wesley wakes up. He's like, he doesn't quite know where he is. He's like, yeah, where are we? Who are you? I'll tear you apart.
Are we enemies? Why am I on this wall? Where's Buttercup? Let me explain.
No,
there's too much. Well, that'd be some. Buttercup is marrying Humperdinck in a little less than half an hour, so all we have to do is get in, break up the wedding, steal the princess, make her escape after I kill Count Rugen. That doesn't leave much time for dilly-dally.
Yeah. Oh, God. What are and what does he say? What are our assets?
He has so he basically asks, well, there are liabilities. There's but one working castle gate, and it's guarded by 60 men. And our assets, your brains, Fezzik's strength, and my steel. Impossible. Perhaps if I had a week to plan. And he's like, if we only had a wheelbarrow, that would be something. Where did we leave that wheelbarrow the albino had? On the albino. Well, why didn't you list that among our assets in the first place? Now, if you only had I've only had a Holocaust cloak. Will this do? We can do work with this.
Where did you get that?
At Miracle Max.
Not a Miracle Max. It fits so well. I asked if I could keep it. Oh, God. Yeah, and so I mean, we can just go ahead and talk about a bunch of different things with this whole sequence. Like, I have not figured out how Fezzik manages to escape unscathed from being, presenting himself as some gigantic spirit being lit on fire. I've seen this movie over and over, and I don't know how he pulls that off.
Yeah, I was gonna say that cloak is clearly got some flame retardant properties. But it's a beautiful sequence. Well, again, it looks gorgeous when they're approaching the Dread Pirate Roberts and terrifying all the men, and Fezzik is pronouncing the Dread Pirate Roberts is here for your souls, and everyone runs away but yelling, and then we get one of the absolute best lines of comedy in this entire movie, which is like, "Give us the gate key. I have no gate key." Fezzik, tear his arms off. Oh, you mean this cake?
Okay, before we get too far ahead, this is the point where we have to pay tribute to Peter Cook as the impressive clergyman.
Yes. Mother Royne, if you're in the chat, we're doing it now. Which, again, another thing that has transcended the movie. Knowledge
is what brings us together today.
It's like, this is one of the areas where it is such like it's such a simple concept for a joke, but it works so goddamn well because Peter just sells that.
I mean, like, and it works every single time because like they build it up where you got the organ playing the the church music. It's built up as something very solemn. He looks like a very serious the priest, and but then he opens his mouth. And it just never fails to make me absolutely lose it.
My words, that blessed arrangement, that dweam
Dweem
within
within
a
a dweem.
and love, true
Whoa,
love,
love.
will follow you forever. So treasure your love. Skip to the end.
Man and wife. Say man and wife.
Have you the win?
Man and wife. Have you the wing?
You the win. I think we just recited every single one of his lines, but how could you not?
Yeah. Oh God. That's so great. I'm sorry. I should be saying something constructive, but I just oh God, it's just so damn funny. And yeah, like you said, it's the most simple thing in the world. But sometimes that just works. It's that kind of like, it's the same thing with when we talked about earlier with the way that Vizzini dies. It's such simple, broad comedy that like is so obvious that it shouldn't work, but it's just something about the way it's executed and performed, and it's the same thing here. It's so fucking hilarious.
It's the sincerity of it. Like the movie doesn't treat it with a wink of like, yeah, we know this is funny. Yeah. It's more just like you get the sweeping music, you get the beautiful and impressive costumes, and then you get mileage. You're almost shocked into, like, did I really just hear that? And then it just keeps going. Mileage is what brings us together today. And the fact that they also, it's intercut with the scenes of Fezzik and Inigo, so like approaching the gate along with Wesley. So we get like a little bit of it, and then we get another kind of interjection, and then we go back to so treasure your love, which gives us the impression that he's going on for a really, really long time, and Tom Humperdinck's exasperation.
Oh God. So Humperdinck hurries things along, skipping over some pretty important parts of the ceremony. So it's not actually contractually binding, which is going to be important.
But of course, Buttercup, doesn't perceive that in the moment, and is, devastated. And so she is resolving to kill herself.
He didn't come, and
we get
this great
one of the best jokes. Which I was going to say. I know we keep saying this is one of the best jokes in the movie. This is another one of the absolute best jokes in the movie when the very sweet but very old and perhaps not entirely with it King. She gives him a kiss on the cheek, and he's like, "What was that for? Because you've always been so kind to me, and because you won't be seeing me anymore because I'm going to be killing myself once we get to the honeymoon suite. Won't that be nice?"
She kissed me.
Yeah. Again, the King is in the background in a couple of other scenes, but like this is his moment to shine.
Oh God. So yeah, okay. So then Wesley, Inigo, and Fezzik make it into the castle, and then we get Count Rugen arrives on scene. Yeah. And Inigo gets his his big moment where he gets to deliver his line. My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. At which point, Rugen just turns around and runs the other direction.
Again, wonderful subversion of expectations here, because obviously we're expecting the duel to commence right then and there, but Rugen has other ideas and races away, and Inigo has to run after him. And then when Rugen locks the door behind him, and Inigo's just throwing himself against it desperately. Fezzik, I need you.
I can't leave him here. He's getting away, Fezzik, please.
And then he just punches the door down. Thank you. It goes off.
And then I really marveled today about the construction of the castle, because the rooms that they run through, descending down to the bottom, like you've got a what do you call it? They run through what appears to be a stable of some kind.
Yeah.
Leading down eventually to a dining room. So I've got some questions about about the way the castle is constructed. But it's great. So we get what's intercut between a Buttercup in the bedroom and Wesley, who has managed to get himself there and is laying down on the bed, intercut with Inigo chasing Count Rugen down the castle, and so I'm trying to think of what we want to focus on. Let's do the fight first, since the other stuff leads into the end of the movie. But and Inigo is so in such a hurry to get to Rugen that he sort of foolishly just pursues him without thinking too much, and Rugen is waiting for him there at the bottom in that dining room, and then attacks him with the knife that he throws at him, and you think, oh no, this is Inigo's and then not doing too well, but he's not going to let that stop him. And we just get this great moment where Rugen thinks this is going to be his big villain speech, where he does away with this guy, but he does not know what he's in for. He's like, you must be that little Spanish brat I taught a lesson to all those years ago. And you've been searching for me your whole life, only to fail now. I think that's the saddest thing I've ever heard.
Bless. Christopher Guest is so good as Rugen, by the way.
I feel like we've talked a lot about Rugen as a character, but we haven't praised Christopher Guest. Like, he's just does such a great job of just playing this twisted psychopath who's just gets so much pleasure from pain and suffering, and it's an absolutely fantastic performance.
Yeah. No, I mean, he's obviously a comedy legend, and so maybe this isn't one of the first roles people will think of him for, but he's just so good in this, and playing an absolutely dastardly character, very malevolent, but also ultimately, like his friend Humperdinck, a coward.
Yeah. And then when Inigo starts to stand up and he's like, my goodness, are you still trying to win? You've got an overdeveloped sense of vengeance. It's going to get you into trouble someday.
Which is all the more funny considering he's planning on killing him right then and there. So someday is now. But of course, Inigo has Inigo is not done, and when he starts parrying, yes, he does. When he starts parrying Rugen's blades and starting to recite his mantra again, "Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die." And then suddenly,
but also, I want to note like the attention to detail with the wounds as well. Yeah. Like when he parries, Rugen's sword, it's still like diverting the blade to like his shoulder, and then over here, and you see the blood coming through the costume. At this point, it's like it's just some great detail for the violence and the sword play. So, but carry on.
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel like we haven't praised, certain elements like the costumes or the makeup, but obviously all of those are great as well. But yes, in this sequence, it's the way that Inigo like slowly is just gaining strength, and at first when he tries to get up, and after reciting it, he stumbles a little bit. Then Rugen moves in again, but then Inigo parries it again, gains a little bit more vigorous, and then he just starts shouting the line, "Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die." Stop saying that.
"Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. Promise me anything.
Offer me money.
Offer me money.
Yes, power too. Promise me that. All that I have and more. Please. Offer me anything I asked for, anything you want.
I want my father back, you son of a bitch." Which is one of the most satisfying lines in film history. Yeah. I think like even if you haven't lost a parent to some like horrible violent act or something, just like it's such a cathartic line if you've just lost a parent, and yeah, there are many times in life where I just want somebody to stab and say, "I want my mother back, you son of a bitch," and and so like that, it's the ultimate catharsis, a moment like that, and it's just. It's so great. It's like one of the great, sword fights and, and moments of revenge. Just, and this, as far as sword fights, like this movie has a couple of those, as we've discussed already. So yeah, it's just, it's so good. And then this has been intercut with the moment with Wesley and, his reunion again with Buttercup, as Buttercup is about to look. Somebody says, "There's a shortage of perfect breasts in this world. It would be a pity to damage yours."
which is a great line, and we'll be referencing it again later. But and then she's showering him with kisses, but he can't move it. "Wesley, why won't you hold me gently?" At a time like this, that's all you can say. Gently. And you can hear again sounds you can hear. But
and then Humperdinck finds his way in. After Wesley says,
well, Buttercup thinks she's married, and he's like, "Wesley, can you forgive me?" He's like, "What hideous sin have you committed lately?" It's like, "I got married. I didn't want to. It all happened so fast. Never happened." "What? Never happened?" "But it did. I was there. This old man said man and wife. Also, marriage." Sorry, we're just gonna keep doing it. And then he's like, "Did you say I do?" No, we sort of skipped that part. That you're not married. You didn't say it. You didn't do it. Wouldn't you agree, Your Highness?" A technicality which will
shortly be remedied. But first things first, to the death. Wrong. To the pain. I'm not quite sure I'm familiar with that term. That'll be short to use slow words. God,
I'll
what?
explain to you, and I'll be sure to use small words that you understand. You warthog-faced
Please,
buffoon.
That may be the
That's
first
the
time in
first
my
time.
life anyone has dared insult me. It won't be the last.
Yeah. Chris Sarandon's facial expressions in that scene are so good. Where like after he says Warhol fakes buffoon, the way he just like kind of takes it almost like he's swallowing some like thick spiky thing that he can't believe it. And he's like, that may be the first time in my life a man has dared insult me. It won't be the last. And then we get the wonderful description of what to the pain actually is.
The pain means the first thing you will lose will be your feet below the ankles, then your hands at the wrist, next your nose, and then my tongue. I suppose I killed you too quickly the last time, a mistake I don't mean to duplicate tonight. I wasn't finished. The next thing you will lose will be your left eye, followed by your right, and then my ears. I understand. Let's get on with it. Wrong! Your ears you keep, and I'll tell you why. So that every shriek of every child at seeing your hideousness will be yours to cherish. Every babe that weeps at your approach, every woman who cries out, "Dear God, what is that thing?" will echo in your perfect ears. That is what to the pain means. It means I leave you in anguish, wallowing in freakish memory forever. I think you're bluffing. It's possible. I might be bluffing. It's conceivable, you miserable, vomitous mass, that I'm only lying here because I lack the strength to stand. But then again, perhaps I have the strength after all. And the music comes in, and he stands up, points his sword. Drop your sword. And Humperdinck drops it immediately. Says, please have a seat. Then he picks up his clothes, goes over and sits down on the chair, puts his hands on his lap.
Again, great physical acting, great physical comedy from Chris Sarandon, and also just a great performance from Cary Elwes, both with his speech and then the moment when he rises. Again, it's one of those all-time, hell yes cinematic moments.
Oh yeah, and when he stands up and rises up and points his sword, like that's like just one of my favorite pieces of scoring in the whole film, because like it builds up to very dramatic, almost to the point where it feels like you're watching a different movie for a second. But then when he brings up his sword, it's like the way that's played with the sort of the synthesizers and stuff, it veers into like, it's still dramatic, but it's aware as well somehow. It strikes the perfect tone so that it's a dramatic moment, but it's still in keeping with the film. And there's, well, I guess I've been praising the score throughout the stream, but I just think it's beautiful. It's a beautiful bit of film music that's like perfectly matched to the film that it's in. So, but yeah, and then we get when Inigo comes. Before Inigo comes in, he tells Buttercup, time up. He says, you can tighten the rope as much as you would like, and then you just hear from outside the room, "Oh!" And then Inigo comes in, and he's like, and Wesley starts to falter, and he says, "Help him." And she's like, "Why does Wesley need helping?" "Because he has no strength." I knew he was bluffing.
Yes, and Humperdinck indeed, as the grandfather promised, does not die, because even though Inigo offers to dispatch him, Wesley wants him to live a long life alone with his cowardice, which, again, if this were a different movie, you might be like, maybe not the best move to leave him like that, but again, he is the prince, and I think it's implied that they're going to leave Florin on the Dread Pirate Robert's ship, so it's okay.
I think there's something in the book about that they are pursued by Humperdinck, but I think it's meant as like a funny commentary on something. I think what we get for an ending in the movie works a lot better. And again, it's not like I can criticize the author because same writer, so he knew what to do for the movie. So, but yeah, and then they're looking to take off, and they find that Fezzik, having been left on his own after being abandoned by both Inigo and Wesley, decided to make his way to the stables to get some horses so that they could make their getaway. And it's something I thought was a little harsh from Inigo, but he says it with a lot of affection, where he's like, Fezzik, you did something right.
Don't worry.
I think Fezzik has done a lot of things right.
He has. But yeah, I think it's meant to be affectionate there and it's a beautiful image with the 4 white horses and gorgeous, Robin Wright falling out of the window and angelic and being caught by Andre the Giant.
There's a lot of interesting behind the scenes stuff about the fact that they had to have Robin Wright actually held up by some wires because Andre the Giant actually wasn't able to hold her just because of all of his problems he had with like his back and everything. But I'm so glad that they did whatever they needed to do because it's a beautiful image and just like he's beaming as he catches her, and it's just like I do like. You can say this about so many of the characters, but I do finishing off. I just want to say like how wonderful it is to have the character of Fezzik as played by Andre. Just such a beautiful human being and such a wonderful character. I'm so glad that we have him on film doing this, and really great human being, as I said.
Yeah, and again, his life was tragically cut short. He had gigantism, excess of human growth hormone. He had a lot of health problems throughout his life, as you mentioned, and obviously wrestling fans have their own attachment to him. But you and I are not really, we're not really big wrestling fans at the time, or now still, honestly. But this is primarily what I know him from, and it's like such a wonderful and warm. It's a truly excellent performance, even though he wasn't an actor mostly by trade. He does a great job with this particular role.
Yeah. And then and then we get the great moment between Wesley and Inigo, where Inigo says, I've been in the revenge business for so long. Now that it's over, I don't know what to do with the rest of my life. Have you ever considered piracy? You'd made a wonderful Dread Pirate Roberts.
I think he would.
Yeah. And then the score again, that beautiful love theme as they ride off on the white horses, and and then over it all we've got Peter Falk's narration, and one final great aside where and as Buttercup and Wesley knew they were safe, and as they reached for each other, it's kissing again. You don't want to hear that.
I don't mind so much.
Okay. Yeah. And then I suspect some creative license on the grandfather's part, and for the final reading of the text, where it says, since the invention of the kiss, there have been 5 kisses that were rated the most passionate, most pure. This one left them all behind. And
Yeah,
yeah, you want to talk about like beautiful final shots, like not quite the final shot of the film,
of
but
the
the
story.
final shot of the fairy tale. Yeah, it's just, oh God.
Yeah.
Everything, like, again, talking about how beautiful this film is, and just like the backdrop, and the framing and the kiss itself, and just, oh God, what an absolutely beautiful and breathtaking film.
Yeah, it is a movie that makes you, want to believe in love, and because it is one of the purest and most, sincere depictions of it ever captured on film, the love story of Wesley and Buttercup. Yes, this is just an iconic final image to leave these two characters on. This is what we have absolutely no doubt that these two characters will live happily ever after.
Yeah. And then that wonderful smile on Fred Savage's face. This kid's been won over.
Absolutely.
And then as Peter Falk stands there, was like, okay. Making sure he hasn't forgotten anything. He's like, yeah. And then you just hear, Grandpa, maybe you could come over again and read it to me tomorrow. As you wish.
Which is the absolute perfect line to end this movie on, because as we know what "as you wish" actually means, and just this has been a true act of love for the grandfather to read this story to his grandson. And that when he had talked earlier about the fact that his father used to read him this story, and he read it to this boy's father, and now he's reading it to him, and now we get the sense that when little Fred Savage grows up, he will probably read the story to his own children, and truer expression of love, of both storytelling and love for your family. There's nothing else like it. So yes, "as you wish" is the perfect final line for this movie.
And then just to then have that lead into the reprisal of the love theme of the film, and to get all those beautiful shots of the actors as they get their curtain calls in the end credits. That's a device that I really miss in movies, and they did bring that back in a fashion for The Lord of the Rings, with the end of Return of the King, by having those Alan Lee portraits, which I always thought was a master stroke, and here I think it's really beautiful and emotional the way they do it, and and it just leaves me really emotional as the credits roll, and I love it.
Yeah, I almost this movie is, so beautiful. I can tear up at different points in the story itself, but I actually almost even always tear up in the credits when, they're showing all the different characters. There's some funny moments. Like, I love the fact that for Rugen's curtain call, they use the moment where he runs away down the hall. But I always...
And then for the albino.
Yeah. The head... The head conk, but the moment that usually gets me is when they going through the initial cast list, and then we get to and introducing Robin Wright as the Princess Bride.
Yeah, and then there is something about the final one, which is and Billy Crystal.
And Billy Crystal, yeah.
That gets me too. Yeah. Oh God, it's... yeah, such a beautiful film. And I've heard from some people that the sort of the framing device of the movie actually sets it up for that there's a perfect excuse in this case to do another version of it at some point in the future. But I'm like, no, don't touch it.
No.
I want, like, this is what it should be. And let generations to come just discover the film like so many of us have. This is one of those that doesn't need a remake or anything like that.
Yeah, no, and actually, I'm glad you mentioned that because I do remember back in, I think it was 2019, and this is referenced on the film's Wikipedia page. There was a rumors that there were people were interested in doing a remake of The Princess Bride. One of the I think it was an article on Norman Lear, and Sony Pictures, the CEO was basically saying that very famous people whose names I won't use want to redo The Princess Bride. And this, of course, got out on social media. And the reason I remember it is because I have never seen a more universal negative backlash to any story. Like everyone was just like, no. And it was capped off by the star of this film, Cary Elwes, on the site once formerly known as Twitter. He had one of the best tweets ever, where he responded to this news by saying, by quoting, "There's a shortage of perfect movies in this world. It would be a pity to damage this one." And that seemed to pretty much put a stake through the possibility. I'm not saying it can never get remade. Obviously maybe like 100 years down the line or whatever. But again, because this movie doesn't rely on the visual effects or anything like that, it's a kind of movie that I truly feel does not need to be remade. Again, you can show this to any generation, and I think that they will still get it and understand the story. And you are never going to recapture the alchemy that this movie had with this cast and this writer. Obviously, like William Goldman, the screenwriter, one of the great screenwriters, he's passed on at this point. Like, you're not going to get someone to top him. So, just for there are other movies where I'm like, yes, I understand, remakes happen, and usually it's just like the original's still there. You can go to that. This is one movie that I truly hope they never remake it.
Yeah, I will say, speaking of 80s movies, I continue to be so satisfied that, in the case of Back to the Future, that Robert Zemeckis has the final say on that, and he has categorically said it will never happen. And so those films have been allowed to stay exactly as they are, as the classics they are, and singular, cinematic creations. And I hope that the same is. I hope that the same remains true of this film. Because not everything has to be remade. People can be allowed to experience beautiful pieces of art that were made outside the past few years. It's okay.
Yeah. And I think Mother Royne, in the spirit of the great Christopher Guest, has the perfect quote where she says, "This movie goes to 11." And indeed it does. It reaches a height that very few movies have reached. And it's a testament to because it famously, this is a movie that when it was being made back in 1987, it got a release, and it had made some money, but and was well received, but the studio didn't really know what to do with it, so it wasn't like a big smash hit. This is a classic example of people discovered the movie on in their own time afterwards, and it became a cultural sensation, to the point that it was actually selected for preservation in the Library of Congress.
But it failed at the box office. So don't you know that this was a colossal it was a bomb, and it was a failure because it didn't make $1 kajillion?
Yes. No, I mean, seriously, and when you look back on the fact that it made, I think it's $31 million, but it was only made for 16 million in that time. And it's this is why the obsession with box office in the moment can be kind of, I mean, yes, it matters for the studio, but no one cares that this movie was not a box office sensation at this point. It's beloved far more beloved
also, nobody outside of the industry cared back then either.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a big difference between now and then. Like the pop culture sphere is so obsessed with all that stuff, and it really shouldn't. I mean, I get why, like, it's a good thing when a movie is successful, because then it gives license for something similar to, be made at some point in the future. But the obsession with that stuff nowadays is just, it's gotten so out of hand that it's ridiculous.
And obviously, like, this movie never was going to get a sequel, and
Yeah.
all the stars ended up being fine. The director and the writer ended up being fine, so it doesn't really matter. And Mother Roy makes a great point. Yeah, It's a Wonderful Life, which is one of my all-time favorite movies. That famously also was a box office failure back in 1946, and then the reason it became the beloved classic that it is because it was basically available to run for free on syndicated broadcast stations, and then it became a beloved holiday classic because people always watched it on Christmas. And now, like, it's considered one of the greatest movies ever, and rightly so. And The Princess Bride didn't have that exact track, but it's not dissimilar.
Yeah, but it was like word of mouth over the years, and being a success on home video and all that stuff. By the time that I finally came to the movie, when I was about 19 years old, I think I saw it because I was sick one week, and I heard, and I kept hearing that The Princess Bride is a great sick movie. Like, when you're not feeling good, it'll cheer you up. And so I turned it on, and I was like, yeah, it cheered me right up. And I've been just in love with the movie ever since. Yeah.
It absolutely is like a comfort movie, a movie that you can put on at if you need a little, pick me up, but also just, it's a great anytime movie. I honestly, this is a movie that I probably didn't need to rewatch before we did this discussion because I know it so well, but I was so happy to do it. And when I finished watching it last night, I was just like, yep, it holds up ever just as beautifully as it always does, if not more.
Yeah. Oh, God. Yeah, it was so much fun to revisit this today and sit through it. Again, like, just especially from the moment that Peter Falk starts reading the story, and you get that the love theme come in, and that that first shot of the farm, it like I said at the beginning of the stream, it's like a warm blanket, and that's the case every time I see this movie. And yeah, it was such a joy to watch it again today, and to get to talk about it with you. And yeah, I don't know what else I can say about it. It's just one of the all-time great movies.
And as we said, we managed to avoid quoting every single line in the movie, but I still feel like we got 60 to 70% of it.
Oh, God. Anything else you want to say before we start to wrap this up?
No, I mean, just we chose this movie, because it's a classic that we both love dearly. Also, because it's a movie that, we feel a lot of people know well, that we know well. And it was kind of a nice way to ease ourselves back into these discussions. But I do hope that, because people love it so much, if you've been kind enough to view this, watch our stream, I hope you feel like we made it clear just how much we revere this movie. If you have not seen it for a time, go put it on. I guarantee you it will lift your heart up.
Yeah. I highly recommend the 4K Criterion collection edition. It is a very beautiful set, and does include the Blu-ray as well. So if you don't yet have 4K, you can watch it on that format as well.
Yeah.
But I think that'll about do it. We managed to keep it to 3 hours and 15 minutes, which is good.
Yeah, we're working our way back from some truly monster streams, including our longest stream ever for the two of us with our Andor discussion before we went on vacation.
I get that it was a 13 episode season, but after that, I was like, no, we got to start making some changes. Like, this could have been a monster stream if we wanted it to be, but I purposely tried to keep us moving,
exactly.
so that it wouldn't get too wild. Because there's no reason why a stream on The Princess Bride should be any longer than what we've just done.
Yeah, the movie itself is only an hour and 38 minutes, and we've gone essentially like double that. So I think we did it pretty well.
So just real quick, next week we're going to talk about Star Wars, The Siege of Mandalore, the 4-episode finale of the Clone Wars. We'll be off on the 27th. Then we'll be back on May the 4th with our discussion of the first 6 episodes of Andor Season 2. After that, we'll be talking about the 20th anniversary of the Kingdom of Heaven Director's Cut. And then after that, we'll finish up with the final 6 episodes of Andor Season 2, leading into our Rogue One discussion on May 25th. And then we have some stuff planned after that, but we will update you guys when we get there, because I think I think having just described everything leading up to the end of next month, I think that's enough of a preview. I don't think we need to go further than that. But yeah, no, hope you guys had a fun time tonight. We certainly had a good time talking about this wonderfully fun movie. And so we'll be back next week to talk about Star Wars.
Yeah. So take care, everyone, and have fun storming the castle.
Yeah, as you wish. Bye.
Bye-bye.